Call to order the Thursday, March 8th, 2018 convening of the Tiverton Budget Committee. If we all could stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes. Mr. Paul.
Present.
Mrs. Jocelyn.
Present.
Mrs. Janik.
Present.
Mr. Leonard.
Present.
I am present. Mr. McNally.
Present.
Mr. Edwards.
Present.
Mrs. Hollenbach.
Present.
Mr. Katz.
Present.
Mrs. Rochley.
Present.
Mr. Cody.
Present.
We have a full house. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. First item on the agenda, if we had any comments from the public. Okay. So then we'll move on to item number 2, which Mrs. Mello can help us. There's a number of accounts all listed that we have here that we haven't hit yet, just to kind of review the line items. Many of these are in our booklet. You should, I handed around, there's a new budget sheet, docket, we want to call it. At the top right, it's in red, it's dated March 7th, 2018. And this is the latest, this was the one that was approved last night. Is that correct, Biden?
Right, so this would be the final on the council recommendation.
Great. And so this was all clocked in properly on time. We now have sort of the input from the town council in terms of where they are, in terms of their request, which is the far right column. Also, when we'll get to it, I think at the end of the accounts, there's another document that was given to us, which it also has it's a stamp date of March 7th, 2018, and these are the revenue projections. All right, it's 3 pages, and we'll go through those on a line-by-line item as well. Okay. Great, Mrs. Mello.
And I'm just going to give you one more handout, which is our calculations on the levy, how we have to show it this year. And we're actually going to write down to what we estimate the tax rate. This is draft estimates. This has nothing to do other than what the council has presented. And Dave Robert is also going to come by this afternoon, so that this evening, but he can't make it till about 7:45 or something.
Okay, great.
So if there's more questions than I can handle, he's going to do it. Okay? And then that's the end of everything we have in the town. This will be my last meeting with you. We're hoping to appoint an administrator on Monday.
Oh.
Okay, so you won't have to deal with me. You'll have some go on the counter.
Thank you.
So council had their final meeting to discuss budget last Saturday. The treasurer, myself, and the tax assessor, we've gone over the numbers, tried to make sure everything's calculated right. Of course, it's the budget committee at the end that prepares the docket, but for the best we could, we proved everything through, and this looks like our final numbers and where we are.
So if you could, Nancy, if you could start the town council, so that for everyone is on page 2 at the very bottom. It's account number 1020, and it goes over to the top of page 3.
So the stipends are the same as they've been for years. There's no change in that. Future needs, we did not put any monies in future needs. The contingency fund, they've increased that from 40,000 to 100,000. That is because we have, at this point, police and our fire contracts are Still being negotiated. The fire contract is in arbitration, so we're not sure what end numbers will be there. That, and there was some need for additional funds in contingency. We felt that if our labor attorney costs were higher and all, rather than to just put it in the labor account, we're hoping not to, we're hoping we can stay within what we budgeted, but not sure. So the contingency fund, they did increase. The advertising ordinance, I had recommended they increase that 2,000. I am already in the red 2,000 in this year's budget. So we've had some extra advertising this year, but that account handles every employment advertising, every public hearing we advertise, for ordinance changes. That if it's a zoning ordinance, it takes 3 weeks of advertising. So that historically runs low, and in the past we've transferred money from council contingency to it, but we thought by at least 2,000 more would help get that through. The second one is advertising and ordinances from the comp plan. We left that the same because we're not sure how far we will be with the comp plan. Our next public hearing is April 9th. I don't know whether it will continue from there or whether it will end there, but then we have to begin the process of getting our ordinances in line with our comp plan. So that was the purpose of that. And supplies and miscellaneous, we left the same. So the major increase you're going to see is because of council contingency and the 2,000 in advertising.
Any questions on the town council budget?
So, Mrs. Mello, the contingency, just I want to make sure I understand, includes some funds for labor
Yes.
contract settlement, okay.
Yes, we're in current negotiations.
Yep.
Both the police and fire contracts expire on June 30th.
So it's more than just the normal
It is,
contingency
yes,
fund?
yes.
Okay.
And one of them, like I say, they've met an impasse and it's in arbitration, so you have no idea what an arbitrator will do.
Yeah, okay,
And they
thank you.
usually, an arbitrator will usually, they'll only look at 1 year, and they usually focus more on the salaries, is the way I understand it.
So then we'd be in negotiations again, like in another year.
If things don't get settled before it hits the arbitration date, it's my also understanding that you can always continue to negotiate. But if it does not get settled before it hits arbitration, it will only settle 1 year. Arbitration only settles 1 year.
Which would be the fiscal year 19, correct? Right.
So we'd be hitting those costs again next year.
Well, you could or you could not. I have no idea where that's going, you know.
Any other questions on the town council? Line item 1020?
Just a quick one on the comp plan. You have 10,000 every year. You need it every single year. We haven't even finished.
Well, we have carried that, you can't carry it forward. What you don't use goes back into the general fund, so we have to appropriate with it. As you know, this, I don't know if you're aware, but this comp plan has been going on for a couple of years already. And
Okay.
so we just anticipate it for the following year. If it's not,
And
I
it's
actually have a
because-
transfer of the money that's in this year's budget to cover the regular advertisement that I'm short 2,600 this year already, and we're only in March. And I've got to advertise for a building official. You know, when you advertise for a position, you're talking, we put it on different sites, but you're still talking, if you put any advertisement in the Providence Journal, you know, you're talking over $1,000 for a day, so.
So the 10,000 from 16-17 went back to the general fund, and there's no.
I'm not saying that went back to the general fund. This year, I'm going to
Oh.
be transferring.
Last year.
This current year we're in, the 10,000 that was budgeted, some has already been used to advertise the public hearings for the comp plan.
No, I'm talking about last year, though. So 16, 17,
Oh,
it
the
says
prior year.
0 was actual. You didn't use any of it, so,
You know what, without going back to look
That's
at the
okay.
June 30th, I can't really tell you from this.
so,
And I don't have that information with me. I'm sorry.
just wondered why you didn't use any, and now this year,
Because the
10.
comp plan wasn't completed.
Now it's, okay,
So we
okay.
had to budget for this.
Okay, that's
But like
good.
I say, I have a agenda request on Monday's meeting. There's 9,000 something left in there, and I'm asking for it to be transferred to the advertising. And then what doesn't get used in advertising goes in the general fund. But we're just short on the other one.
Thank you.
I can look that up for you though, Ruth. I can get you the answer if you remind me.
I will.
Great, now we'd move to the line item insurance, which is 2190, that's on page 6.
So these quotes, these figures have come from Mr. McGreevy, the prior administrator. And on the health insurance, he was using I believe it's a 10% increase, could be a 10.5% increase, which is what the trust has given him for the projected increase. Now, I checked with the school department. They're using a much lower, I don't know if it was 1%, I can't remember, but it's a much lower percentage. However, they do have some that they can use against that. Rebates was it rebates on the insurance that we got? Yeah, the town already used theirs 2 years ago. But they're gonna be using some of that, so that's gonna be an offset to them. That's why they're lower. Whether or not, these are the best numbers we've got so far, whether or not it comes in at that rate or whether we get it down a little bit, we don't have any new figures on that yet. And sometimes we won't get it until closer to June. That's on the health insurances. The liability, those are quotes he got in there. I think it's all in the back, he might have put it all in backup anyway.
Nancy, on health insurance actives, is that all town employees across the board, school, municipal?
No, this is our municipal
That's just municipal.
health insurance, right. Anything that, within the budget that has to do with the school is gonna fall under the school's budget. This is strictly municipal. They have a HSA insurance, health savings account insurance. And for some of the unions, they're on a, what they call a 2-4. The unions are paying 2, the employees are paying 2, and the employer pays 2. We front load it, but they have to pay theirs per paycheck all the way through the year. They reimburse for some. So a lot of that fluctuates on whether it's single plan, individual plans, and family plans. And there are some, like the AFSCME union, they're paying 3/6. So their deductible is $6,000. They pay half at $3,000. Town pays half. And it is being negotiated in the police and fire, so I couldn't tell you what that's still in negotiations.
Mrs. Mello, I have a question about health insurance. This probably is more appropriate to ask the town solicitor. But the charter specifically says that the clerk and the treasurer is not to have health insurance. However, the Affordable Care Act specifically says that every employer with more than some number of
We have
employees
to offer it to them.
must offer.
Yeah.
So-
Actually, the charter says you will provide health insurance for your town clerk, but your town clerk pays the same copay as the others. But years before me never did. but it just says you will provide it. So clerks prior to me never paid anything to the health insurance, but I do. I said that it means that you have it, but you pay the copay like the others. But the treasurer was not in there. Actually, I'm not sure if that was one of the petitions I put before the Charter Review Commission to allow, and it passed, that's right. I did put that as a proposal before the Charter Review Commission, that the treasurer, because it's now full-time, it was never full-time before.
Yep.
But now that it's required to be full-time, I did put a proposal before the Charter Commission, and they did approve it, and I know if it's still, yes. So it's been approved to include the treasurer clerk in that clause, so that they will provide both and at whatever the, and I put that in there, at whatever the copay is of the AFSCME union or something.
So does the health insurance line item include enough money to cover the
Yes.
the
that's the
employer
full-
side of the
Yes.
treasurer and the clerk
Yes.
for health insurance?
With the, we are using what the trust gave us for the percentage there, but Denise actually does a tally of everybody she's got on the insurance and stuff, so it's really spread right out. Denise Surratt does all that for us, and she's very good at tracking this stuff.
Okay, so we've got those,
Yes,
the employer side of that
Right.
insurance covered. Okay,
right.
thank
And
you.
there's, goes back in, it's like revolving, but it's the portion that the employees pay is also calculated in there, so this is like a net number.
Okay,
And there's so much change from individual to families that go on throughout the year. You know, you hire somebody, it's an individual plan, then they go to a family plan, or vice versa. So there's always a, you know, we can never tell exactly, but yes, we do it for the number of employees, and that's our share,
okay, thank you.
net of theirs.
Any other questions on the insurance account? Yes, you had just a couple questions. So the prior town administrator, the recommendations when we're looking at the health savings account, the employer share, 10.5% increase, that's the 187,000, correct?
That came from the, no, health savings employee each year. Okay, yes, I'm sorry, yeah.
And then the other line items are ones that calculation as well, based on what?
Yes,
Okay. And are those recommendations, or are those?
those are actual numbers that we have, but the problem is, it's what they're recommending right now, because the trust has given us that number. That number will probably come down. It has in other years, but it hasn't at this point. If in fact we get better numbers prior to the budget committee completing their review on the budget, then we're gonna inform you that, hey, that looks like it's gone down, and you're gonna be able to adjust. Remember, you have the last say on this, so. It won't end with this budget. It will end as far as the charter obligation to submit to you, clocked in, I think it's by the 12th or something, or the 14th, a final budget and expense and revenue from the council. But if something comes up that is really going to alter this, they're going to come before the budget committee, and if it's something like this, if we get a better number from the trust, we're going to come before you and say, look, they think 8% is more around, and you're going to be able to adjust.
Just those numbers, great. Okay, if we could head in, there's a few items that continue on page 6. If we would like to hit the next one would be it starts out as new, it's OPEB, which is the other post-employment benefits. Did my homework.
I'm sorry, would you please repeat?
You bet.
At
So-
the very bottom of
Yep.
page 6? Okay.
Mhm.
It's post-employment benefits. So, right now, the only money that we have going into that account is from the police department, who pays 1% of their OPEB. So I want to say there's like 35,000 in there. I don't have my revenue with me, but there is in there. But it is only what the police, the employees are contributing. Paul put 100,000 because we need to start facing our OPEB obligations, but the council.
Can you explain what that is?
It's your post-retirement. In other words, we have the pension obligations for these retirees, the health insurance for retirees, the police and fire. There's several categories within each of those now. Some police officers receive it for life, some fire receives for life, others receive till 65 if you were hired after certain dates. There's all ranges of this, but it's all their health benefits after retirement.
So, and that doesn't include, like, if they leave and they're paid out sick time and paid out
We
vacation?
don't-
That's something different,
If
right?
they leave prior to retirement, what we have falls under the unfunded liability, where you, by law, have to be paid for the vacation time you didn't use, or if it's in the contract, so many sick days that they've accumulated. That's not, it's only after retirement that we have to do this.
And this is health insurance, the line item, correct?
It's not in that health insurance. That is active employees.
No, I'm sorry. When, so the request of 100,000, the town council had
The-
0. But
Right.
the fund, there's a fund with some money in it, right?
Right.
Now, and that's the town's obligation to pay people who are retired for what? So you just went, you said for
It's
certain.
for their post-employment benefits.
And it includes health insurance?
It includes health insurance. It could be their life insurance that they carried, whatever that contract gives them after post-retirement, we're covering. And that's a big liability, and it is to everyone. And actually, council's trying to cut back on some of that liability in different contracts and the way they're arranging them.
Okay.
But we should be, if you, you didn't have the auditors, but when the auditors went before the council, that is, I mean, our unfunded liability on that is amazing, in the millions. And we need to start, chipping away at it. Right now, we only have the police department contributing 1%. And I think they said 1% was, I forget what it, 1%, I want to say it's less than $1,000. And just for a year's health insurance, it's like $17,000. So you can see we're not anywhere near where we need to be, and that grows constantly. That's something the council has to struggle with and work out.
So the department head requested 100,000, but the town council,
It wasn't a department head, that was the prior town administrator.
oh, okay,
Because we need to start
okay.
putting in there.
But the town council nixed it.
The town council didn't recommend it because, they
The budget
were
issues.
weighing over everything that they need,
Okay.
what the increases were gonna be, the debt service, everything. They just felt they couldn't, and that's been the way it's been going, but we're gonna have a, of course, your OPEB liability is if everybody retired on the same day, and that never happens. But.
Okay. I'm being slow or confused or something. Under insurance, we have group and health insurance and group dental for retirees.
Mm-hmm.
So what is this and that?
This is for your active workers when they retire,
Okay.
okay? That's what OPEB is gonna be. Those are already retired, and we're facing that
Oh, okay, so
already
those
as a
are,
liability.
the
as an-
OPEB is future retirees, and
And it's all gonna mingle, because it's all unfunded liability of the town for benefits that employees are receiving after retirement.
and this is something that the town has to pay exclusively,
Something every single town has.
or do the employees pay into it?
Only the police department was paying 1% into it. I want to say it has about 35,000 in it, I'm thinking.
But we need to have them all pay into it.
You certainly, well, you need to have, not every single employee, because not every employee is entitled to benefits when they leave. Like AFSCME employees, there's probably 3 or 4 left that would receive insurance till they were 65, maybe not even 4. And they don't. So anybody hired after a certain date in AFSCME, when you retire, you're entitled to cost your unfunded liability, your sick time that you didn't use or your vacation time. But you're not entitled to health insurance and life insurance after you retire. So it is mainly the police department, the fire department.
So
I don't know
is-
that it includes others.
In
Yeah,
our-
there's a couple of, I don't want to say stragglers, but there's a few that were still here that have been longer term and you know, they may still be on, you get insurance till you're 65, but that's it, if it's from AFSCME or, not even Teamsters gets the insurance to 65 anymore. So the only ones I know of is the police and fire.
So in our current
Now
negotiations.
Denise might be better at explaining that.
In our
Denise
current
Surratt.
negotiations with the police and the firemen,
They
is
do bring this
is this
into
being discussed?
negotiations. They address it in negotiations.
Just to clarify what this is, I don't think it's quite true that it's what we would owe if everybody retired on the same day. The way to think of OPEB is essentially it's another pension plan. And so your liability is if you took every penny we've already committed to pay for these benefits, added it all up, reduced it by the amount that you think you could get in investments, and then that's what you would have, so the liability is what you would have to have in the bank right now for the system to pay for itself, essentially. That's how pension works, it's how OPEB works. Nobody's put anything, most cities and towns haven't put anything away because it's not required by federal law as pensions are required. So everybody's been paying it off as they go. So as you adjust, obviously the assumptions will have a big effect. So if people are living longer, your liability goes up. If you reduce the level of benefits, right now, the liability could drop a whole lot. If the town and the employees start putting in like they do for pensions, that'll also reduce it. We're talking millions, and if you calculate, what we're actually going to pay out, the millions is what would have to be in the bank right now, but it's probably approaching $1 billion for what we actually have committed to give retirees.
The towns have started to try to appropriate some to that. But I will say that this town has made some strides on that in the fact that before an AFSCME person was entitled to insurance till they were 65 years old, family plan, and you could retire at 58 years old, so that was 7 years of it. There are no more, there might be 2 people, I'm not sure, but if so, that's probably the max. And that includes all your civil workers from police department as well, all the AFSCME, all the clerical workers. Teamsters was the same way, and if you look at those contracts, you're now going to see that after a certain date, no longer are those benefits available to them. So there are strides being made, it's just very slow and tough to make.
Okay, Nancy, if you could hit the next one, Social Security 2250, it's the very bottom of page.
Yeah, that's just running the calculation for whatever is salary and.
So just all based on
That's all just based
town
on the
payroll.
equation, yep. And the treasurer reviewed it and felt that was comfortable.
2270, unemployment security?
Yeah, I think we have 10,000 in that.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much, I think that's what we have What page are you on? Brenda?
It's at the very
Next
top of
page,
page 7.
7.
Oh, yeah. So I think we've always, when we last, or the year before last, we had anticipated, unless we really anticipate that there's gonna be multiple people on the unemployment, we have kept it at 10,000. And I don't know where it stands this year so far, but it hasn't been a problem. So they left that level.
Any questions on unemployment security?
Right. It's, and Nancy, I just want to clarify, last year it was 30,000, and this year it's 10.
Right.
So it's
because-
not level, it's actually,
It's reduced by.
It's reduced by
20,
20,000.
But you're gonna find other years it was 10.
Okay.
When we know if there might be 2 people collecting unemployment on us, because the town pays direct for the unemployment, so we're responsible for the full amount.
okay.
And what happens is unemployment will, if they award that person the money, they will pay it, and then we have to pay
To reimburse
the
it.
unemployment. And if it's not, it takes us chasing it to get it off, so. We
But it-
usually leave 10,000 thinking someone during the year is going to be collecting. That year 30 was unusual. We knew 2 people that were going to be collecting.
Okay. And then account number 2300, unfunded liability, sick and vacation.
Right, we have increased that to 100,000 because there was a couple of retirements. What that account pays for is if someone leaves that is entitled to accumulated sick time by contract or has vacation, unused vacation time. That is used only when someone retires and is due that money, because it's not in their department budgets. So at some point years ago, they decided, let's just make it a line item in any department that has, whether it's a police, fire, or AFSCME worker. They will use that strictly for the payoffs.
Okay, any questions on this line item, 2300?
Just to break in on the, go back to the OPEB for a sec, I think per our town audit, our current liability is $27 million, so that's what we would have to have in the bank right now for it to be a solvent plan, $27 million.
And I know you have a representative from the auditors coming here, and they explained all that to the council, so if you have a question on the OPEB, I'm sure they'll explain it to you.
Justin, could you repeat that number?
It's around 27 million, including both the town and the school side.
All right, thank you.
So that's a legal obligation, the OPEB?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
If it's in the contract and it says when you retire, you're gonna get
You're gonna get,
insurance for life, health insurance for life. You're entitled to health insurance for life. Unless somebody challenges it, Mr.
Yeah, it's a legal
But
open
that is
question
what
still.
is, yes, that's,
I mean,
very good.
I mean, there are,
Whether it's illegal, but I don't know.
Rhode Island governments aren't allowed to contract for more than 3 years, so there are legal questions of how you can contract a 25-year benefit when you're, but
but right now, it's not funded at all.
It's funded by the police department.
Department, 1%.
For 1%. And I want to say there's about 35,000 in that account, to the best I can.
And I
And so
think the schools
when
have a better-
someone comes upon
I don't know if the
retirement,
schools-
we pay OPEB through the contingency fund?
If someone comes to,
Like if
no,
someone,
it's the
That's
group
what
health
you
insurance
said.
retirees. So right now, we're doing what you would call a pay-as-you-go. So as the benefits come due, we just pay it as we would if they were still an employee. The OPEB liability is because in theory, by the time somebody retires, you should have already put away all the money you're ever going to have to pay for them. They should be done. You should be done paying for them. The same principle applies to pensions.
Oh, okay.
So the idea is we haven't put
So
money
we're-
aside.
okay, I
and this,
see.
but we're going to have to pay
So-
it. So it's this
so
the
today's
number.
workers are paying for,
Well, no, the taxpayers are, but it'll just go up just like this every year. This $930,000 will go up as more people retire.
I mean, it's not being paid for, it's unfunded right now.
unless benefits are changed. It's all, has to do with what their
Okay.
contractual obligations are. And like I say, we have made strides. We've reduced, like, 10 years ago, we were paying from 58 years old when the clerical could retire till they were 65. We were paying their insurance. Can't do that anymore. It's out of the contract. And it's out of the contract for the Teamsters. And I can only tell you that, we negotiate, I'm not in negotiations. I've been doing it, but not normally. So, I mean, they negotiate what they can.
Okay. Last chance on the 2,300 unfunded liability and sick vacation, 100,000. Once, twice, gone. Okay. Now I'd like to go to the parks and maintenance. Page 11, thank you very much.
So park maintenance is under the DPW director. And he has, the mowing services is a contract. Field rehabilitation is left the same, and he's left preventive maintenance the same. But the mowing is a contract with Geo, I believe it is.
I'd like to make a comment for the Budget Committee. I know that we hopefully will have a site visit the last Saturday of March to the parks in town. Not having seen them since before the winter, I don't know how I feel about the grass cutting is a contract, I'm not worried about that. But from the last 3 years with my kids playing a lot of sports, I felt as though some of the parks and fields were a little under-maintained. I'd just like the Budget Committee to be open-minded after we hopefully do that site visit, that we might have some questions on how we could maybe improve some of our fields in our parks. I don't know if that makes sense. To me, it was one of the things that I always felt was a little underwhelming and lacking. Police need money for things, school needs money for things, but I just feel like we really haven't done a lot to improve our field. And our kids are a big part of our community, and sometimes when I'm at a soccer game or a softball game or anything, I just feel like I go to other towns, Portsmouth, Middletown, Newport, Bristol, their facilities are kept in better shape, they're much nicer, so I'd like us to think when we do go, maybe if there's some improvements we could do to this. So, thank you.
Mike, can you get any info on how much they spend on theirs and versus how much we spend on ours, or any info before we talk about it when it comes
I
up?
can reach out. I know some of the parks and rec directors locally, and I can ask them.
See how that works.
And I can assure you they probably spend a lot more.
Right, I'm
I
just
know.
curious, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we may not be
I
able.
wouldn't think this would be something crazy where we're going to ask to
No, I
put
know.
lots, but just for a comparison, I'll do my best to get that.
If you have time,
I
thanks.
will, absolutely.
And covered in this is obviously Town Farm. What are the other sites?
What that McGee,
You would have Pecasset.
Cassett,
You would have
Bogamash.
Booger Marsh. You would have East Road, East Field behind the fire station. There's a
Yeah.
little baseball field there. Joe, what am I forgetting?
Judson Street.
Judson Street.
We usually Judson Street,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
but we're not using it.
It's a little scary to play basketball on.
Oh, okay. They're
And
maintaining it,
this-
so we
So
don't play.
This
east
isn't
or
just
west
the,
of
I'm
Main?
sorry.
West side of West
And this just includes mowing and things like that. What about equipment maintenance? I know we've called, like, Pecasset, the slide was broken this year, and there were swear words
Well, I
painted
think I
in
told
it.
you
Like, that all
last
comes out of this budget, right?
This is school
Didn't I
budget
tell you
stuff, right?
last
No, the
week?
school
No.
does not own
On
Pecasset's
recreation?
playground. That is
So
owned by
it's town,
Parks and
okay.
Rec. That's
Right.
not.
But last week when we did recreation, I told you that they had a plan because, and that's why I asked that you please go out and visit the recreation areas, because Chris Romeline, who's the chair of the Recreation Commission, has a real problem with the playground that's up there. They're either gonna have to take it down or do something with it, and he's trying to come up with a plan to kind of fundraise and whatever to get some decent equipment and stuff up there. So yes, this is strictly mowing. McGee does strictly mowing. The field rehab is when they put the bluestone on the
Yes.
diamond? Yeah, I'm not sure what all those are called, but yes, that's what that is. There was, the DPW director did a little bit of drainage up at Town Farm. The soccer fields has some drainage problem up there, and, I mean, there's a lot to be done, but that was one of the.
Like, for instance, if anyone knows Town Farm on a busy weekend, the parking is really bad. You have people lined up and down Main Road. It's very dangerous. You have kids crossing the road.
Yeah.
We could probably try to find additional places to put, I'm just saying, I would like to, one of my hot buttons for this budget committee is to look at rec and see if we can improve our kids' safety and their experience growing up in our town. I feel like we owe that to our kids.
Is there a recreation department there, I mean, that
There's a
deals with it?
recreation commission.
Commission.
Volunteer people.
Okay.
And they also handle the scheduling of these
Mm-hmm.
baseball teams and soccer.
It's a ton
is
of
big.
work.
I mean, you can go to any one of these fields during the summer and during the
I mean,
spring, fall.
I would expect them to come before the town council if they have any concerns about like safety and those kinds of
The
things.
Recreation Commission went before the council, and
Okay.
I relayed it to the budget committee at the last meeting. They had
Okay, I wasn't there.
concerns with that playground
Okay.
and some other things.
Yeah, I wasn't there, so.
And they're working on it, but they're
Why,
volunteers.
why is the Picasset field not school? And do the schools use it?
The town actually cares for, I believe, from the fence. They only have to the blacktop
parking.
parking
They just have the
area.
parking
The
lot.
school
and the
doesn't own the
school.
land that the park's on.
And they don't use it
Go
either?
from the fence down. That's
They
what
use
I
it.
always know.
The school uses it but doesn't maintain it?
But.
Yeah, but all the other-
whole
that's my
town
question.
uses- The whole town uses.
Right,
it.
but
Same thing with Fort Barton.
I was just gonna ask about Fort Barton also.
They don't know the land, and that's not to say that they haven't maintained it. There's been times where
Okay.
we, as a PTO, have raised money for swings and to replace things out there
Okay.
that have become from parent funds,
Okay.
just to better the playground that our kids play on. However, we're helping to maintain that, and the school department doesn't own it.
Right.
And the whole town uses the property for soccer and baseball.
A lot of what I'm
Can they go in any
asking
school
for, a lot of what
playground?
I'm asking to be open-minded about is more the safety things. So, for an example, last year, the whole left side of Cassett, where the playground was all pricker bushes and trees. And what happened is during recess, kids would accidentally kick balls in there. They go in there and they get cuts and scrapes, and they go into the nurse. And so we asked DPW, right, Mr. Paul, and they were gracious enough to go down there and they cut all those pricker bushes out. It's just the little things like that to make the experience.
Who did that? Who did?
The DPW did that
Okay,
for
thanks,
us.
yeah.
But just the little
DPW
things we
put
can
some
make.
drainage down there and
Yeah,
everything.
drainage,
They do
just
what they
things like
can. They just did some work, I think, for the cemetery commission up at the cemetery and saved the town money there too.
What's the relationship with the youth soccer? In terms of, do they pay the town a fee? I know that they do through a lot of volunteer, some of their own
They
maintenance and
don't
stuff.
pay the town to use the fields, because what they're charging these kids is to pay. Now, I don't know all the facts on this, but I can tell you that they pay for the referees, for the
The uniforms.
equipment, for the uniforms, that's all. It's just like Little League has to pay for all that. They do fundraisers and they
Chalk,
do
the paint.
and pay. No, the town doesn't pay anything for soccer, but, or Little League or whatever else is on there, but we do keep up the fields.
Sorry, one last question. Can the townspeople go on any of the school fields on off hours then, or not?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
It's your property.
Those school
I see.
playgrounds
Yeah,
and all.
yeah.
if you
Okay,
Drive down,
Yeah,
you
it
see
belongs
kids.
to
Okay, thank you.
the town citizens.
Just can't bring a dog.
Yeah, your dog
Not
isn't
supposed to.
allowed.
Yeah, I used to take mine there all the
Go
time.
ahead, go.
And remember, there are other teams that play on these as well, just like our Boogamage Park has, adult teams that play on it and stuff. They did talk recreation of charging some of these. Personally, I wasn't opposed to charge outside adult teams that come to play on our fields. But I was one of the ones that were opposed to charging our local volunteer
Yeah.
teams. Those coaches aren't being paid
Yeah.
Mrs. Mello, can I ask you about that? We go to Bogamosh Park a lot with my son, and one of the things that when you're trying to use like the track, you gotta be careful when the adults are playing because you'll get hit with the ball. But one of the things that I noticed about that park specifically was when the adult teams are playing, they're all out of state plates.
Yes.
So do they pay to use that field, or they pay to? Joe's nodding yes, and you're nodding no. So it's definitely organized. They have uniforms, and they have.
They pay, I think,
Oh, you know what they do?
$350
They pay towards the
each team
electric.
to play.
Because the electric's on at that time.
And they maintain that field.
Well, they may do some
Does
work to
that
maintain.
include umpires and softballs and insurance or anything?
Yeah, they pay for that. I think they pay for the lights. They did a big renovation there last year. They spent, I don't know, $8,000 to redo the field. That was all by the teams that played there. They all paid, I don't know, each player probably pays $60 to play, so they pay so much towards the league to repair and fix up the field and the electricity or whatever, so.
I
But
did
they do
hear at
pay a
one time
fee.
they were paying towards electric. I've never seen that revenue account, so I can't tell, but I'll look it up for you. But I'm sure if Joe knows a lot more than that, than I do, so.
About 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, the rec commission had talked about doing fees,
Yes.
or field
Was
fees,
under Susan Gill, yes.
and under Susan Gill, and the outrage by the taxpayers, because there's a lot of kids who are
For
playing
the
sports in
local
town.
teams in particular, and because we go and play on their fields, and we're not paying to use their fields either. So, I mean, it's something you do for the
Yeah,
youth.
there's
I don't know what else you do.
Reciprocity.
No, I was specifically asking just about the adult
Yeah.
teams that I've seen.
I didn't realize it was big, but I did one time hear them say that they help, if there's something that needs doing up there, that they help
Last year they
contribute
spent about
towards it.
10 grand on redoing
But I
the
have
whole
never, just
infield
like
and
Little
all that,
League
so.
will help donate towards, I know Claudia Laniers in the past has said it, she's helped donate towards, like, putting bluestone in or something more when the town didn't have the resources to do it. I mean, they do different things for it, clear it, help do this, that, and the other, but it's just manpower. I don't believe
It's
that,
used
I know
for-
they're not paying.
No, and Little League also, they do the signs around the fields, and they get some money from sponsors.
Yeah, but they have also donated some things. I
They
remember Claudia
absolutely
coming
have.
before and
They
donating.
absolutely have. And Tiverton Youth Soccer has also. They built that concession stand that's in the first parking lot.
Yeah. So I mean,
All
I think they
donated
can do
materials.
things like that they can, but they do not pay the town per se to use that field.
I do, to chime in here, though, my recollection of the outrage was that the I don't want to say scheme, because that has a bad connotation, but the plan that was put in place charged soccer a lot more than baseball per student, per child, and that kind of thing. So that was a large contributor to the controversy. And I'm admittedly looking on the fly, but according to audits, it isn't absolutely clear to me, unless I'm looking at the wrong numbers, that Portsmouth, for example, pays all that. It might actually pay less than we do on Park and Rec, but I don't know what that category means in the audit, so it might mean something different. I raised those 2 points to suggest that this isn't usually the approach I take to budget matters, but this particular funding thing may be much more of a policy issue, because you're coming up with these controversial things to get funding from children in different sports, and how do you charge the adults and not the kids? And so I don't know how much it'll fall into the budget committee's purview to really do anything about this, unless there's a line item that we think could be increased that has a specific purpose. But otherwise, you're just starting to get into creating policy.
Just to touch on that though, Justin, because I looked at Bristol's, but I know in Barrington, for example, totally different town. Their recreation budget versus field maintenance, two different things, because their highway department maintains every field in town. So whereas we may have an individual line item for grass mowing, that's absorbed in Barrington's DPW budget. So it'd be, unless you're looking at the DPW budget and the recreation budget, and you specifically, I guess, ask the director, yeah, you may not know, so.
Right, but to my point, I was just saying it's not easy to make those comparisons, and there are lots of balances. Like we heard from the DPW that Bristol pays a lot more per mile. Well, if that's including mowing every field, that could help explain why they pay more for their roads. So it gets to be a very complicated question.
And Middletown leases out part of, like, Gaudet Field is leased out to Salve, where they maintain and they pay to use that park.
I think in the end, it wouldn't be up to us to make any type of determination. What I think I'd like to do is raise awareness in the town, with the council, the whole thing, that in the future, if Bill Anderson or anyone from the Rec Commission thinks that we could do some improvements, that the town would be more open to doing things. It probably doesn't cost a fortune, just a little, just to help with safety and maintenance of what we have, so that it is a good situation for adults and children alike. That's, I think that was the main thing. When we go and look at it and we say those things look like they could be improved, maybe it would be something that, maybe next year they could look at it again, the council could talk to the rec committee, et cetera.
Okay, any other questions, parks and maintenance? And I'd like to move to, it's page 13, which will bring us to the civic appropriations.
So the prior administrator had recommended a little more than this council has approved. They've reduced the amount to the visiting nurses to $5,500. And that's, actually, that's their only charge, only change on there. Instead of the $10,000, they brought it down to $5,500.
Bay Community Action.
Right.
The visiting nurses
Oh,
did
I'm
go
sorry,
down
East Bay.
500. East Bay went,
Right.
yeah.
They had requested 10, and they looked at the prior years, they had been at 5,500, and they decided to remain at 5,500.
And they're not putting money to the women's resource, Port County Women's Resources?
They didn't ask. And I want to say, were they one that hasn't even requested this current year's budget?
They haven't even pulled out the money that we gave them before.
And they didn't come before and ask. Same with Samaritans.
Any questions about?
So same with wildlife rehabilitation. There's no ask there.
I think they already did appropriate anything towards the last year already, and so there's no request or, as I want to say, approved in last year's budget for the wildlife, and then they didn't request it this year either.
I'd like to make an ask from the members that were sitting on the budget committee last year. If I remember correctly, the East Bay Community Action was voted to a 0 last year. Am I correct on that?
Yes, Michael.
Correct. It was. So what was the main reason, to just to jog my memory, that we, at the budget committee last year, voted majority to wipe that out? What was the?
I didn't vote for
We-
that.
Or anyone
Right,
that
right, but
against.
there's
so I
reasons, there's reasons. The reason was that we were really up against a very difficult increase, and we were trying to save money everywhere. That's the main reason. That organization has millions and millions of dollars. They don't need, they pay their employees even high salaries, so they don't need our money. It's nice to do it. It would be good to do it, but they don't need it. We do use it. It's a good organization, but that's what happened. It was a way to save money. That's all. 1 year, and it was understood that it was just going to be the 1 year.
Oh,
So-
that wasn't my understanding.
What was your understanding?
Well, last year we looked at these lines a lot, and some of us brought in research showing the high salaries of employees, the histories of the organizations, where they came from, where their money came from, and versus all of the other priorities. I mean, we look at the DPW with a building that needs to be repaired, and we're giving away money to charities. There's a legitimate question if that's a role of this town government to be taking some people's money and saying, we're giving it to this charity. I mean, I'm part of a local charity. If I came and had an ask, would I get taxpayer money, or who decides that and on what grounds? And so there is a question. If we want to do things with the fields and improve them, we're giving $14,000 away here to private organizations that might do great work, but they have other sources of revenue, and it's maybe not the job of a town government to decide that this particular charity is worthwhile and this one isn't, especially when the people coming in to ask for the money have six-figure salaries, 7 or 8 people deep in the hierarchy. That was a lot of the rationale there.
Denise, can you speak to this line item?
I just want to say that we did end up giving them $2,500, I believe, from council contingency. The council decided that zeroing them was not correct. So we did take $2,500 out of council contingency, and that's what they received last year. It's not reflective here, but that's what we did.
How are we going to see those when that happens, though? How do we know that you've done those things if it's not reflected anywhere?
I'm not by the number of people that those organizations serve in the town.
No, I know what you're saying. The approved budget, all this says is what was approved by the voters, and was zero.
We just won't find out if
But
we
it's,
just do
well,
that.
it's public.
Yeah.
I do it on TV, it's in the newspaper. We gave $2,500, and we will admit that, it's not hidden.
No, it's okay. I just would like to get a list of those items if possible.
You can ask the treasurer for that.
Well, that would
The
be,
only, the only real way you can do it
We
is you
do
go
meetings.
online, go to town council, go to click clerk, and then you have to go through every meeting, line by line,
That's also voted on.
and pull them out.
Well, just
we do transfers all the
Just
time.
for the record, you can ask the treasurer, anybody in Tiverton can ask the treasurer at any time for a breakdown of all the actual
Right.
spending, and they'll
Right,
have it.
okay.
You can watch a meeting on YouTube.
That was done in a town council meeting, correct?
Correct,
So was that a public meeting that was advertised?
correct, on TV.
No
Yeah.
secrets?
As I recall last year, the amount of money we gave, we got back like 100 times more
Right.
in services. And so I thought it was really insulting to zero it
They're
out.
providing the service anyway, Jennifer, so actually you're giving money for something that's going to be there anyway.
I'll recognize the podium.
Oh, thank you. It's Donna Cook, I live in Tiverton, of course. You're giving money away, and you're not really getting anything. It's already being provided. So instead of taking care of our children that need safe places, you're spending $14,000, and I hear there's unsafe playgrounds, and I see it myself. We need these things taken care of. I just don't understand why you would give money away when we have needs for the children so they have a safe place. Visiting nurses, East Bay community, I'm not saying they're not worthy causes, but they are already here. And you're giving $5,000 away, and like, first of all, who decides that? Who decides for me who I'm going to give to for a charity when I can make my own choices on a charity? And then I'm compelled, against my free will, to give to these charities when I have charities that I give to. Not only does the town take over that choice for me, but then I don't get the benefit from taking it off my taxes for something that I gave for a cause that I pick. And then one of the, who picks these charities? Why are they being picked? I don't think it's right. I don't think the government should be picking this. $14,000, if you're going to spend it, I'd rather have it on the park,
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And I think it's
Could I-
important.
Could I ask the town council in terms of how the list of the different organizations comes to us?
They come to us and they ask us for these requests, and then we decide whether or not we're going to give it. I don't even know what to say about what was just said. East Bay Community Action is a very important organization here in Tiverton. They have a food bank that really services half of Tiverton. I know this because I'm part of Singing Out Against Hunger, and we give a lot of our money to East Bay. I've been at their food bank. I've seen the amount of people that go there. They also do a lot of other services for this community. This isn't just a charity we're giving to. This is an organization that serves Tiverton very, very well. And they should be insulted about what was just said, because they do really, really good work, and I firsthand see it. So,
But that's your
Could you
personal
please not-
decision.
no, this isn't my personal decision. This organization came to the town council and asked for this money. The town council feels that this is an organization that helps Tiverton, and that's why we did it. It's not my personal decision. It's 7 members, and this organization is an organization, we give $5,500 to them, they spend well more than that on Tiverton. So it is not my personal decision.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we're not going to resolve the dispute of who should contribute to charities and who should not. So I would respectfully ask that we move on.
Deb, did you have a comment?
My only comment was that these are different organizations that do service the needs of our Tiverton citizens.
Could I make one when she's finished, could I make just one short comment?
Sure.
The other side of this coin is, if we're careful in our budgeting and we don't overtax these people, they will be able to buy food for themselves and won't have to depend on a charity all the time. And they would, be able to spend money on a course and maybe get a better job if we are careful in our budgets. So just, that's the other side of the coin.
It's a lot of different opinions.
Right.
She'd rather see it fields.
Right.
No, I'm saying.
I'm going to thank you, Mr. Leonard, and this is what the discussion was, is the requests that come to the town council making their recommendations, and we had the same debate last year. Any specific questions about, not the worthiness of them, but rather the organizations?
I will, Mr. Chairman, I will make a comment. If my memory is correct, the Eastern Rhode Island Conservation District provides a service to the town in terms of, I'll call it technical input into the fields and forest tax considerations.
Sources of pollution and what.
Yes, they actually do some definitive task.
But they didn't request anything this year,
Yep. But they're in.
right? Am I looking at this line, right?
No, I think it's 1,000.
There's 1,000.
Oh.
Rhode Island.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Eastern Rhode Island. So they're really a functioning part of the town government.
Sorry.
So let's move on to street lighting, which is on page 11, at the very top, item 3380.
I think I explained this last week to you as well, that there were finance charges that they were hoping to offset a rebate on the street light, on the electrical accounts. That's why the council was gonna go back and relook at some of the electric accounts within the departments.
I know we
Discuss that,
hit
I
it for
think.
some of the departments, knowing that they had
Right,
to put their
because
piece
they
in.
have been asking for more, but and I told you that the council was reviewing it because that there was a finance charge of $95,000 to change these LED lights through these buildings. And so the monthly charge was being charged to each individual department's electric bill. That's why they were running so short. Okay, so the street lights is a separate account from all that. And that started a little late getting going, and this not completely finished yet, because some of our fixtures are old, and it's hard for them to get the, I guess, replacement ones that they're putting, the new ones putting in to retrofit them in.
To retrofit it is a problem.
So, they're still working on that. But the treasurer tracks that completely. I have a spreadsheet I can give to you on that. And she said the 44,000, is it 44,000 we put in there? Yes, that's gonna be fine. She's
So
tracked
we
what it
didn't-
is, and that's fine.
We didn't incur, what do you want to call it, finance charges on the streetlights like we did on the buildings?
No, it's completely separate. And what will happen with the streetlights, though, is eventually down the road, we have to replace our own lights
and
little fixtures if they break and things, whatever the connector fixture is. But, yeah, so our expense, any added expense to that will come down the road. And what will happen is that on that account, on the streetlight account, we will receive a rebate. That rebate is going to be used to offset some of those finance charges so that these departments will realize only their monthly bill and not that, because like the DPW, his finance charge every month is $410 added to his electric bill. I think he explained that to you.
Yes.
So they were all panicking over their electric bills. But the intent is that we're going to get that rebate, pay as much of the finance charges. We won't be able to pay the full $95,000, but we'll pay as much as we can off on it so that the departments won't be hit with this added charge.
Makes sense.
They're bright.
They're very bright.
They're a lot brighter. And is there any way to not make them all as bright? 'Cause
To dim them? I don't think so. I haven't heard.
The angle is adjustable?
Yeah, well, maybe that would do it.
'cause,
Why don't you like it?
we just need a lot more curtains.
Oh. You need blackout shades.
Well, they
Yeah.
are brighter,
I
they
know
are
that if-
brighter, but it
I
seems
know
to
that if a
be
res-
more localized. It isn't as big a lozenge of light.
Comments, though.
It's
They
like
work
there.
first time.
Well, it's an LED.
I don't need that much light.
By the way, if you do want to address that, you can ask Bill Anderson. He
Oh,
can have them
great.
come and actually adjust.
Oh, thank
Like
you.
Dave said, they could adjust it so it's not so
Okay.
it's spread out. But I wanted to ask, you said something about in the future we'll see credits to this line item. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying credits, you'll see some added charges. It may increase from the 44 because eventually, now they're all new going up now, so we're not having repairs on them. But if we have to go around and change bulbs when they're going out all over, well, we don't have bucket trucks, and we don't have this, and we don't have that, so I'm just saying, down the line, you have to realize that you're gonna have some expense to this. I don't know, maybe we have to rent a truck and do them all at once. I have
But this
no
will be a
idea.
line item that'll be in existence for a long time, the way it
Well,
is.
they're brand new now, so I can't imagine that within a couple of years we'd need. But I
They
don't know
last- how long
it takes
do
a
they-
bulb to burn out. I don't know.
That's gonna be good for 20 years or
10
so.
years, 20 years.
Yeah, a long time.
Wow.
Well, they're LEDs.
And then they'll sell, go out again.
Oh, I know there was a
Okay.
All right. The hydrant services, 3420.
hydrant service.
Reasonable.
Yeah, that's to service the hydrants that are on the town's properties. And we used to pay them $500 a month, but they would be sending us bills for $3,000 a year. And we said, no, we kind of just kept resisting it, but we are up to $750 each. That's a flat fee that we give to the North Tiverton Fire District and the Stonebridge Fire District. Maintaining the hydrants that are on the property. On the
On a private street,
school
on a street.
I think it's, I remember one time they came and they said, well, we flush them out, we do this,
They
we
do.
service them, and we
They do.
do whatever.
Who shovels them out?
Um,
Or who's supposed to?
The fire
The
department.
owner, no, I think it's the owner of the property. They don't shovel the one on my street.
No.
But they were
that's-
down on Main Road
Shouldn't
after
I?
the storm, yeah.
They can't get to all of them.
Well,
No, I mean, we just shovel, I mean, it takes 2
You
minutes.
know, I've got one on my yard, we just clear it.
Yeah, on your own property.
But the
business ones, they do.
You must remember these old bills.
Yes.
the problem we have here is, well, not to pick on them, but as you get older, you're not shoveling out hydrants. I mean, I got people on my street that are 80 and 90 years old, and they have fire hydrants.
So, I'm
The water
sorry.
department takes care of the fire.
I haven't seen the fire hydrant that I can see from my house shoveled in 10 years.
I don't understand.
Down here they do.
You shovel a fire hydrant out? What does that mean?
Get the snow away from
The
it.
snow, clear the snow.
Oh,
Because the snowplow comes in and buries them.
all right, sorry. I was thinking mud.
They come, they need to get to that equipment, they can't be digging.
You know, you shovel it out, and here comes the truck, boom, it's gone.
All right,
You know?
You want to be looking for it if you need it.
all right. That makes sense.
All right. Moving on to the next is the on-site waste treatment on page 11, the lower page, it's XXX account.
Well, actually, now when you're, is it still XXS?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've given it its number. That is under the DPW budgets as well. He's in charge of that. And
What?
that is what we pay to
What page?
wastewater district to handle any of our on-site problems.
Okay.
Now, I gotta tell you, they're always looking for 40 or more, but we pay them per, I think it's monthly, for the services they render just on the on-site. They send us an invoice, like, could be $400, could be $1,000. And to date, we have not overexpended that, but we have received a lot of letters from them that, you know, we've got to pay them one way or another when they do the service. Because it's not in contract, but they are working on that. That is something they're going to meet with the town administrator and they're going to go over. But the council is pretty adamant that that's all they're budgeting on that.
Nancy, could I ask 2 questions? Can you give me the new number so I can just document it if you have it?
It's not on my copy.
I have the much
It's on some of you, but no, it's, oh, I can tell you, the number is, it's under the
right here.
DPW 55. Oh, yeah, it is. She's got a
right here.
copy with it on. It's 5530-7732.
And it's 30,000.
Yeah, it's on the new copies. You
Do you have the new copy?
Yeah.
It's the same one as landfill
Yeah, I
operation, right?
replaced first page, but I put that in.
This was supposed to be the
after.
latest. I guess we don't have the latest.
But that is the number.
Okay.
5530, meaning it's Highway 7732 on site.
Okay.
Now, as I remember last year, Mr. Kendricks came and gave a fairly rousing defense of the amount of work that they were doing on all the on-site disposal systems. But on the other hand, the council was pretty adamant that basically all they were doing was writing letters with no follow-up action. Has there been any change in procedures? Are we still doing it the same way?
Well, there is going to be a meeting with, they now have an attorney, Peter Ruggiero. So they now have an attorney, or a new attorney, I guess, and they have been requesting to meet. I'm kind of holding off because you want the new administrator to be involved in this.
I just talked to Brett Pelletier, who's on the board, and I told him that as soon as we get the new administrator, because they asked to meet with me also, so I said as soon as the new administrator is ready, we'll meet with them. But believe it or not, he's going to be busy for the next few weeks, so
Yeah.
we'll try to fit him in as soon as we can.
Well, I think the key is there's got to be some agreement about what work is really being done
Well,
and
that's why
how
we have to meet.
valuable that is. because merely writing letters, reminding people of
They submit an
something
invoice.
with no, well, yeah, they send an invoice to the town.
It's phone calls, it's writing letters, it's going out on site. They detail their invoice. I didn't even realize they had them till about a month ago. Mary Lou handles them in the administrative.
We're gonna meet with them and we're gonna
Yeah.
talk about it and we'll have the new
Well,
administrator
Last year, there was
evaluate
certainly
it.
a broad gap between the two understandings of what they did.
We're hoping to have a new administrator by next
Yeah.
week, so we're hoping to get some of this done.
And I happen to have a lot of respect for Mr. Kendricks. He's a
Oh, me
very
too.
professional, et cetera. So it would be good if we can come up with some common understanding of the facts, whatever they may be.
I think that's gonna be handled.
Could I make a comment, Chair, Mr. Chair? On that same issue, it wasn't that we didn't have respect for him, we all had respect for him. It was that we were trying, again, to save money and not have to do all of that in 1 year. It could be spread out over several years. It doesn't have to be done all at once. And I had another question. Is there any law that's enters into this, Rhode Island law or anything that tells you how you have to do some inspections every certain
Septics and-
I think it has to do
time?
with that MS license we have on
Okay.
stormwater and wastewater and stormwater. I think that's all part of that
Okay.
plan.
Okay. It's called the waste, I just want to know what the name of it.
I'll get you a copy of,
I'll email you and remind you. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
All right. No other questions on the on-site wastewater, waste treatment? We'll head to building maintenance, 5130.
Sorry.
So this is also under the DPW director. It is maintenance crew, Manny and Phyllis. Hopefully most of you know them. They do a yeoman's job here. There is the salary is, they're under the AFSCME contract. There is, for both of them, there's a jump up in salary for one because he reaches some plateau. So that is for the two men. That 95,000 pays the salary of two full-timers. There's a foreman and maintenance director. And none of them are entitled to longevity yet, so that isn't in there. The only, the council reduced their tool replacement to 1,000. They thought that was enough for whatever. And Bill Anderson reviews his budget, and he was in agreement. The only difference he had that we just recently changed was the gas and motor oil. He needed it increased, and he used that by actual usage. And so he convinced the council that that was just short in there. Because they are on the road all day.
All the time.
And can you, Nancy, tell us what they cover? So obviously any kind of maintenance here in Town Hall.
They cover maintenance in all our town buildings. The senior center, if anyone's been down to that senior center, they had those floors done. They painted the whole building. They worked on the window things. They've done fire stations, DPW. They're actually stationed at the DPW is where they're little. All the town buildings they handle, as well as picking up the trash at the beaches, making sure the bathrooms and stuff are done at the beaches. Yeah, they're just going all day. The senior center takes a good chunk of their time. And they're out there plowing. They're in charge to plow, I think it's the town hall area, the library. One of those snowstorms, they were just out at night shoveling all the work at the new library. The senior center, they'll plow. They have a plow on the front. It's a pickup, whatever, a little truck. It's not, but they're in charge of that as well. They do all the walkways. I mean, they do everything in here. They empty the waste baskets, they do everything. Vacuum, you name it, they're doing it.
You said they have their own small truck with a plow?
They have, I don't know if you've seen it, it's a white,
Four-wheel drive
call it.
utility.
Is that what you call it, a
Yeah.
utility truck? Yes, okay. And it says, Tiverton Maintenance right on it.
Okay.
Yeah, and they can put a plow on it for this, so they do help plow. And sometimes even the director will take the truck if he needs to plow a certain, help out with a certain route, he uses their truck and does it. It's all under the DPW.
Nancy, just because you mentioned it, the bump in the salaries you said is attributable to one of the two? I mean, that's,
There's a salary increase on both of them, but
Okay.
there was something with a little bump on one of them. So, I can get you that contract. It's in the contract. This isn't a new contract for them. In fact, this is the third year that we're going into, would be the third year of the AFSCME contract. Just email me the numbers and that one.
because that's a 13% jump.
It's two people though.
Right. But who average?
There is some bump in there, I know there is. I think it's for me.
Maybe for the CDL for plowing, so.
Oh, maybe.
Yes.
Mrs. Mello, I have a broader question, and the line about the custodian personnel salary brought it to mind. But generally, not just on this item, but all throughout the budget, when we see in a department that the salaries or wages are such and such, who calculates that? Is that calculated by the treasurer's office?
Prior administrator would have taken the salary, he gets the information from the treasurer's office though, he would have calculated it all. That's why you're gonna find the only calculations on salary not in here are the police and fire, because they're negotiating those contracts.
Well, the reason I ask is because I think the Budget Committee got whiffled last year because by some process, the police department added 5 people, and they were pretty well able to cover all of the salaries of those.
They may have covered those 5 people, but they were not put into that
Well,
salary line when they hired them.
somehow, that salary line that was in the budget that came from the police department had a certain amount, not 100%, but it certainly had a certain amount of elasticity to cover extra people that wasn't in the count when the budget was made. So that prompted my question, who does these calculations?
Well, the prior administrator did them, but I can assure you that Denise reviews and helps with all the numbers.
Okay.
on this. And I think if you look in the backup, it's supposed to have a better, it's supposed to have a breakdown on, how many lieutenants, how many
Yeah.
sergeants, how many patrolmen, how many probationary. And that's how we always did it. We calculated the numbers across, I've lost track on how they did it.
Yep.
I know where you're going, because we used to have a different.
Yep.
Bill Anderson did say, when we went to the site visit, that last year's salaries were miscalculated
Oh, that's
for
right, he did.
DPW.
Yes.
And they were put in lower. He had to float money, transfer money to make his payroll.
So it was.
So I don't know which particular, and one person was put in as part-time, but was really a full-time employee.
So it was represented incorrectly.
I'm not sure this
But
was.
I don't know if it was this one.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This is
He
gonna
didn't
be,
say.
it's not a big deal. If he just emails me, I'll probably forget if you don't, but if you do, I'll send you the breakdown on that. He should have it in the back there,
Yep.
in the back of your.
I just want to know
Yeah.
who does, which computer is cranking out all the numbers?
the administrator's computer. But I gotta tell you, Denise Surratt is right there with these numbers too.
Well, I hope so,
She calculates half of the stuff.
because that's
Because
where,
she has the source.
yeah, that's
of
where
the
it really
numbers.
should come from, is the treasurer's office,
Right.
because they do the payroll. So it shouldn't, there's no magic. Well, they do the payroll to the
Last year,
payroll
he didn't
service.
coordinate it.
So it's pretty straightforward. It's readily available.
These are accurate.
And I'm sure, Mr. McGree, because Denise was in there working with him a lot on this budget, I'm sure he relied on Denise.
Yep.
She's
I know
very good at calculating, but she can't do, if you tell me you got this many ranks, she's not gonna,
That's right.
this is what she's gonna calculate it on.
That's right.
That's what we do with the treasurer, we go by what.
Where are we? Did we do police?
Yeah, we already did.
Just because it came up, under salaries on public works, maintenance workers went up about $25,000, which is about 6%, but I think that's probably was the miscalculation, not the building maintenance.
Yeah, I think it was.
It wasn't in here.
Okay. Any other questions on the maintenance, building maintenance? All right, so that covers us through all of the line items except for the school department, whom we've invited for next week, as well as I think the request is that the police pension, on the money manager come in for that. But that should cover us with all the individual items in terms of what's been on here in terms of the review process. Tonight, we gave around, I guess I'd ask some input from others, as I know, per the charter, the town council needed to submit the revenue estimates. Didn't end up on our agenda. So I don't know whether we have.
We do revenue next week, not a big deal, I'll be in. Denise will be in.
Yeah,
Maybe the new administrator.
I would say in
The new
an
administrator
abundance
won't
of
be.
caution, just put it on next week's agenda.
Just make
And this
note that you
way,
received it.
this way, everybody has a copy they can look at in advance.
Great.
And so it's a short document.
So could I ask that you please, if you want to review this sheet, that you do that now, because Mr. Robert has come out tonight specifically for that.
Do we need to go to other to do this, to move it up? Just following.
Since it is kind of falls under the same thing.
I'm just asking.
Well, I think,
You can take his comments.
I think it's legitimate to, I mean, we can add to the agenda by a simple majority vote. The real, I mean, if somebody were to challenge it in open meetings, the real question is whether there was an intent, whether there was action taken, whether there was intent to deceive, and having an additional document, I don't know that.
It does, I think, in my opinion, you're fine, because it's tying in to that final expense that I handed you out today from the council. So you're really tying this in, we're just trying to say where those numbers fit into this. And of course, it includes our revenue numbers, but nonetheless, I don't think it is a violation. I mean, you could challenge it, but.
Unrealistically, I think that if I were in a general public looking at this agenda and I saw town council, I would expect the town council's submitted budget to be included.
Well, I'll make a motion that we add both the revenue projection and then the calculation of the tax rate to the agenda specifically as part of the town council presentation
For this evening.
for this evening.
I'll second that.
Second.
Any discussion on adding both of these documents to our discussion this evening? Okay.
I don't like getting things like this on the fly, because I can't listen and think. I need time to go over it, and so.
Any other comments?
Well, this wouldn't foreclose future discussion, would it? If somebody,
No.
No.
Yeah, we're just
Not at
receiving
all.
information, so.
Okay. Okay, all in favor? All opposed?
So, yeah, I'll move on.
I'm gonna move. No, you sit with Dave.
So-
It's more gonna be Dave Robert, because the tax assessor, that's where some of these numbers get computed from, so he's gonna, you have one, Dave?
I do.
There you go.
Always ready, prepared. Good evening, all.
And can I just, before you go, 1 second, for those of you who are new, this page that, with the color on it, is in essence the calculations that we're going to need to do as a budget committee, is figuring out what all the expenses are that we approve, what revenue that we're agreeing to, and then there's the valuations on real property, tangible property, things along those lines, which Mr. Roberts here to help us out. But this is how all the calculations come out to say what will the taxes be. So tonight, that's what this is some of the assumptions that are based in here. But we'll have our own worksheet just like this, where we'll come up with it through the voting that we'll do as a committee to decide what expenses we're putting forth as our proposed. Right? Does that make sense? So, thank you.
Makes perfect sense to me. And yes, along the way, as the revaluation progresses and my office does a final computation on the motor vehicle values, I'll come back to the budget board with updated numbers. So as that progresses, I'll update. But just to run it down really quickly, just for those people who are new and to update where we're at currently, based on the current budget that you're being presented by the town council and the school committee, right now, if you look at the top, well, let me explain the left side. The left side is actually what our tax certification looks like. This is just a reproduction of it on this paper. This is what gets submitted to the state after we finalize our tax values. The budget committee goes through their process. There's a FTR vote. Then, based on that information, the valuations of the town and what the budget requirements are, we end up extrapolating out the tax rate, and then this is presented to the municipal affairs at the state level. So this gets certified every year, and it gets forwarded to them. The important number on this is the one down in yellow. That is the final levy number. That municipal affairs is based on the 4% increase that the town will be allowed to go up to if it chose to do so, without looking for any type of exception from the state. So the 36,713 number was the certified levy number minus the motor vehicles.
Could you walk us through that again, where you are?
Sure. So the top left, where it says the 2017 tax levy, the box up on top, real property, those are the gross valuations. The next box is the exemptions. So some people are entitled to personal exemptions, such as veterans and elderly low-income exemptions. Those get deducted from the gross valuations, and then we come to the net assessed values. We apply what the tax rate would be, which last year was 1905. So you apply the 1905 to the net assessed values, and that's where you come up with the tax levy.
So that bottom left, 36,713,000.
Correct. So last year, we raised $36 million from real estate intangible property. The motor vehicles was always kind of held outside of the computations. I'll explain that a little bit on the right. But based on last year's General Assembly vote to phase out motor vehicles, the way that they're handling the motor vehicles is now really removed from this levy as far as that 4% cap calculation goes, because the idea is that they are reducing the motor vehicles as far as what the town can raise in taxation, excise tax. So that is now excluded from this calculation.
Could you, so the motor vehicle tax was part of the 4% cap? and now is not?
Correct.
So to calculate this year, you're...
Apples to apples, because we're taking only the real estate intangible from last year. So that's why you don't see motor vehicles here.
Meanwhile, there is a motor vehicle tax.
Correct.
And where will that go? Where is the motor vehicle tax show up?
The motor vehicle tax is still part of the levy, but not part of that 4% cap calculation.
That would be on top of that?
Because
Because I know for the future, we're not going to...
It's an aside from that, because, yeah, you are also raising taxation through motor vehicles, but again, because of the phase-out, that is not part of the 4% cap calculation, because on the on the town side, the amount of money that we're going to raise through motor vehicle taxation is going to continue to decrease. So that's why it's not part of that
So we're
calculation.
just getting used to this now, we're phasing it slowly out.
Correct. No, it's a different schedule from that, but the first couple of years is 5%. So last year, that's why some of you may recall that you get a refund check if you had paid your motor vehicle tax up front in full. We issued a refund tax because part of that phase-out was instead of taxing the vehicles at 100% of native value, they were taxed at 95%. This year, it's going to be at 90%. So people who paid in full got a refund. People who were paying quarterly, their quarterly payments were adjusted.
So was that an instruction from the state that you should calculate it in this manner?
That's correct.
And so in theory, if we were trying to compare apples to apples, what we would do is we would line up last year's numbers to the left, and there would be where it says minus MV taxes, it would be, what, 165,000, whereas that number doesn't appear in...
Well, there's a different reason why you're deducting it from this calculation on the right.
What's that?
And the reason being is that we're only calculating the tax rate. This is only strictly a tax rate calculation. It's not a tax levy calculation. So when we calculate a tax rate, because motor vehicles is a fixed tax rate, $19.14 per thousand, times the valuation, we come up with a tax number that we'll raise through motor vehicles. The remainder, the real estate and tangible property, is the flexible tax rate, variable tax rate, and that's the calculation on the bottom, how you arrive at that tax rate at the bottom of that 1775 that's in yellow, which is the projected tax rate based on these estimates. That does not include the motor vehicles, again, because that's a fixed tax rate. The net result being midway through after that abatement number, Justin, of that 37 million, that's what you're basing the percentage increase on. That would be the number from the cap, which you're nowhere near.
So the $17 does not include what we have to pay for our motor vehicles?
Correct.
Okay. So it's not, you can't take the docket from last year's financial town referendum, you can't take that page and compare this page to that page.
Right, because prior to
the auto.
Right, the phase-out law came in effect after the FTR.
So to say that we're going to go from 1905 to 1775 is not the full picture. So
well, it is and it's not, because motor vehicles it's always a fixed number.
right, I understand that, but we're still going to pay 90%. We're going to take motor vehicles valued at 90%. Whatever of the market value or what's described as market value, then we're going to pay taxes on that.
Right.
Right.
But right. So the offset of the motor vehicles is, although the town is going to be receiving less, the state's reimbursing us more.
Yes. So that will come in as over on the revenue
On the
line.
revenue side.
Right. But the other 90% we're still paying. So what we're paying will be added to that 1775 to make it more equal to the 1905 of last year.
No. 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 No, either way.
No, if you-
It's not.
if
Because
you-
motor vehicles is always separate. The motor vehicle valuation, while separate, it really doesn't have an impact on the tax rate for real estate and tangibles. I mean, it does because it's a reduction of the total budget number needed, but because we're being reimbursed from the state, we're treating it kind of like a wash. We're supposed to be held whole by the state by any discount that we're given.
Right, if you'll recall, Cecil, on the certified docket, when you calculate the levy, we do calculate, subtract the expected motor vehicle tax
Right. From
before
up
calculating the
above.
percentage,
Yep.
the rate on real and tangible property. So in essence, that calculation is the same. The revenue still comes out before you get to that percentage calculation.
Okay.
Right.
But I'm still concerned that people are going to look at that 1905 and the 1775 and get pretty enthusiastic about that reduction.
Well,
No, that's comparable, that's apples to apples.
Yeah, they would have gotten enthusiastic regardless of the motor vehicle situation because the growth of the town has been such that you would have seen a reduction of the tax rate regardless.
And the increase of the revenue.
Yeah, the revenue increase, sale of Essex Library, so on and so forth, has helped.
True, but the percentage of a driver would be the valuation of property, but.
Okay.
So to go down that right-hand side, the first couple of lines items, it's obvious to everyone. The municipal budget has presented, the school budget has presented equals a gross current budget of $51,565,000.
And can I just, real quickly, just so you know, that ties in the page that we just received tonight on the docket in terms of what the totals are, is pulled directly from us in terms of the numbers, just as we're pulling these in.
And
That school number is also what was put, that the school department brought today and was put
Right.
in your.
So one of the handouts today, we all have envelopes. They're not secret. They're from the school department with what the request is, which is reflected here.
And just for perspective, that $51 million, $565,992 represents a 9.4% increase in spending.
But that's before revenue is calculated.
Right.
And
It's just a
revenue
budget
is up.
item. Yeah.
But it's a 9.4% increase in spending for the
Right,
town.
we're trying to watch our spending, so that's why it's important.
So after we move on from the 51 million number, we take out the projected revenue of the 12,875,000, leaves us with a net budget of 38,690,000, which we have to raise by taxation. Motor vehicles, again, is a fixed tax rate, so you remove the estimated revenue from that, leaves us with a 37,315,000 levy that we have to raise through taxation through real estate and tangible taxes. Compared to last year, the net levy with the real estate and tangible, that represents a 1.64% increase. We then add on to that the number for abatements. So we're projecting this year we're going to abate $75,000 in taxes. Generally, in a year of a revaluation, typically in the past we kind of figured loosely 1% of the levy would be abated. But the last few years, we've actually been trending lower than that. So at this point, I'm comfortable with a number of 75,000 that we may end up in abating. And those abatements can range from various issues. They could either be through motor vehicles, an error in motor vehicles. It could be an error in the data from a real estate valuation, so there's a number of reasons why we may abate taxes. This year, I believe we're somewhere, net abatements is somewhere around 30,000. I'm just guessing, but it's somewhere around there. So when we add the abatement number in, the cover, the budget, we're at 37,390, which then represents a 1.84% increase. And that is apples to apples because last year we also added an abatement number in there. It was 75, but we're adding the abatements the same way. Based on the estimated, and this is very important to keep in mind, the estimate right now for the revaluation is roughly, approximately a 10% increase across the board. Now, when I say 10% across the board, that's a 10% number that we're going to end up applying to valuations from next year, but that doesn't mean that everyone's going to see a 10% increase in their value. Some people might see 2%, some people might see 40%. It all depends on neighborhood, style, condition changes, those type of things. So with that in mind, we're estimating that the net valuation will be somewhere around 2.1 billion. You divide that into your budget need, and that comes up with a 17.75 tax rate. The current tax rate is 1905.
And that is on the requested budget by the town council. Oh, the approved
It's a
budget.
reflection of.
Reflection, sorry.
But anything on the right-hand side is purely speculative. We don't know what those budget
Correct.
numbers are going to be.
Right.
The left-hand side, that's written in stone.
Okay.
That's it.
Correct. That was a certified
This
levy.
side,
So that number really can only go down if.
Or up.
It could go up.
Yes,
Absolutely.
You're right, it could go up.
Yeah, I mean, if we're estimating right now 2.1 billion, and it ends up at being at 2.0 billion, then that tax rate number is going to go up. Yep. Usually, anyone knows me, I'm fairly conservative, so fingers crossed.
So
Go the other way.
So how much of that, well, the 2.1 is 8.2 billion, 8.2% increase, but how much of that is new property and how much of that is just appreciation?
Don't know.
What does it average normally in the past 5 years, say?
The growth has 0.5%.
Per year?
Yeah.
So you're expecting 20 times the growth this
Yeah,
year?
because the market has really appreciated, because when you're taking a look back of the 5 years, you haven't really seen a lot of appreciation of market value. So when you're taking a look at a revaluation that was based on 2014 sales versus today's market, there's been some substantial appreciation. Well, partially. No, there's not copies there. That's my worksheets. There's a lot of appreciation of just the market itself. So when you saw back in '04 and '05 and '06, appreciation levels on a yearly basis of 17%, some areas of the state of Rhode Island is actually starting to see that again. So there is a lot of appreciation. There was also a lot of new construction this year. So I don't want to downsize that as well. There was a lot of new homes, Plantation Drive and such, where you're looking at, $400,000, $500,000 of homes. So that's part of it. And part of this number will be a percentage of completion of the casino as well.
Do you know roughly how much that's valued at?
At this point in time, we're still working out a number for the final number for the casino, and it's going to be based on that, because what we're estimating is as of December 31st, they were at a certain percentage of completion. So, please don't hold me to this number because we're still working through it, but it'd be somewhere around $10 million as of that date of new construction value. So we're rolling that in there. We're also rolling in the Longplex.
value of everything.
The value, it depends on the value
Right.
of the house.
Right. So-
Don't get misled with.
Right, right.
That's the problem in
Right.
doing these kind of estimates.
It
We
is.
wanted to go through with us so that you could see how this is calculated
Right,
through,
it's
but at
per,
the same
per
time,
thousand,
we don't
but
want people
then your
thinking,
house
oh,
might be worth 25%
the
more.
rates, the tax rate's going down and they're all gonna
Right.
have a $200.
But this will look better if we get anything in the mail this year saying that these are the tax rates from all the neighboring towns. We're gonna look more online.
Well, you're gonna get a notice on what your property is,
Well,
new assessment.
to a certain point, Mike, that's correct, because people will take a look at that. However, in comparison of the other towns, because we are on a 3-year cycle of revaluations, I'm not sure what Portsmouth and Newport and Middletown may be on. They're not on our schedule. So as far as a comparison, their tax rates are going to be adjusted as much as we're going to be adjusted. So if we're going down, more than likely they're going to be going down as well.
To the novice, when people look at numbers, they like to look at numbers. So
True.
they'll say, oh, wow, that looks more
Right.
like this, right? And that's
Yeah.
usually where they leave it.
But to Nancy's point, and this is the same fear that we have every single year that we go through this, especially in revaluations years, revaluations are truly meant to be just revenue neutral. So yes, your house value is going to go up, tax rate goes down. In theory, you're paying exactly the same amount of taxes. The difference is when you have different rates of appreciation or even depreciation on property values, again, based on location, styles, and other things that we take a look at. So that's the thing when, in general, people would not see a tax increase with a revaluation if you just stood alone on the reval.
I had a question. So what sort of decrease in valuation of our property should we expect having a casino in the town, which definitely would bring our properties' values down? No one wants to have, the traffic, the possible drunk drivers.
That hasn't been proved out in the market.
So like Lincoln?
So I was in Lincoln, I was the assessor in Lincoln,
Mhm.
and none of the surrounding properties saw a decrease in value.
What years was that
I was
approximately?
there in 2005 and 6 and 7, somewhere around there.
Right.
Yeah.
But I know, I mean, just personally, I know this may not be proven in your numbers, but a lot of people would not want to move to a town with a casino. If they have children and that type of thing. It's just one of those obvious things.
But that's...
No, if they come, future.
Right, so those people who don't want to move here won't.
That's right.
People who don't have a concern with it, they will, and the market value of that property, whether it's within a quarter mile or 3 miles away,
right,
is not going to be affected, because if those particular buyers don't have a concern about it,
then they will.
It's
Okay.
not going to affect value.
Okay, thank you.
So we're getting a full reevaluation this year?
Every revaluation is a full revaluation in theory. The only difference is when you use the word full, it's a knock on every single door to do a measurement.
Is that what we're getting?
We're not doing that. We're just doing an update.
When is this going to be completed?
A statistical update, which we do with a full revaluation, it's all based on statistics. The difference being when we're knocking on doors, we're just making sure that the data we still have in the system's correct. There's, weekend warriors putting on decks they don't pull permits for, so that's kind of the reason to make sure that everything is a level playing ground.
Okay, so
But we're doing a full revaluation in 3 years.
all right, so the one we're going to do, when are those numbers going to be available online?
The one that we're doing right now?
Yeah.
I'm hoping, fingers crossed, by the end of this month.
Okay.
All right,
Well,
so...
there's a reason I ask this, because
You'll be notified by
mail.
mail.
I wanted to challenge my evaluation, only I had nothing comparative, other than my last one myself. And then it was a couple of months later when I went online and cherry-picked a bunch of houses that were identical to mine to see what they were paying.
Right.
If I had had that when I made my challenge, I could have made a better case.
Then you missed the opportunity, because what happens when we do a revaluation, the revaluation company mails out notices, and then you can meet with them. If at that point in time you don't think that you had sufficient data to contest your assessment with the revaluation company, when you get your tax bill, you have 90 days to appeal to me. And at that point in time, every single number is out there on the internet.
Does it say that on there?
On the back of your tax bill, there's an appeal process.
Because I remember when I got my notice in the mail, I had about 2 weeks.
Well, that's the notice from the revaluation company.
Right.
They're under,
So
time
I came
sensitive
down
to.
here and talked to the guy,
Right.
and he was like, tough, go away, literally.
Mm.
So really.
I apologize for that kind of experience, but on the back of your tax bill, it does state that you have these appeal rights.
Okay. Keep that in mind.
So any other comments? So I think, again, what's most important here is looking at the methodology, the calculations that we'll have to do when we finish in a couple of weeks with ours. But we'll have, in essence, a spreadsheet where we'll put in any updates that come in so that we'll do these same calculations. Great, thank you very
Great.
much for your time.
I have a question though on the revenue sheet.
Right, so yeah, I would like to go then.
Perfect. And also to mention though,
Thank you.
for Mr. Dakotas' benefit,
Thank you, Dave.
if there's a mailing this year with the map that we've all seen, it's still not going to be anywhere close.
To the person that doesn't know any better, it'll just look better aesthetically.
I've gotten those postcards.
Yeah, I've gotten some too.
Okay. So the revenue,
What are you saying about that?
So
how much money are you gonna bring in, Nancy?
This is the exciting
I
part.
can tell you that.
Nancy, on here, is there any of the revenue from the casino?
No. No.
Why not?
Why not? Because I don't have any means of projecting any.
And we're expecting it to be open in October? Is that still?
I heard it was the end of October, November before it opened, so
So it'll be open for?
I'm not even sure we would realize any revenue until
A quarter.
a quarter has passed. The revenue will come from the state. And
So we should
I-
expect about half a year's worth of revenue?
Something should probably, but we haven't,
Because it
there's
opens in
no
October.
projection in here for casino.
If it opens in October.
Right, so there should be at least a quarter's worth of the revenue, right?
They'll probably pay in arrears.
Right.
Which is high hundreds of thousands, right?
Right, but we can't depend on that because we don't know. They're
We don't know
saying
if
they're
it'll be-
opening in October,
yeah.
but we're not going to put we don't know.
Yeah,
It's not-
because.
You know what I mean? Like, and then if they don't open in October, which I know the governor's pushing for them to,
Well, it's like the soccer complex.
it's,
I guess the initial year, they're not sure when the funds will come because it's a.
no one's
it's
sure of that.
Payment after the fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we have to keep in mind that originally it was gonna open in July,
Absolutely.
so we'll see.
Yeah, we don't know what
That's
they'll
right.
count
Time
it,
will
but
tell.
hopefully they'll be open by.
Yeah.
Just to what I understood, and it's very unclear, but it's quarterly we get the revenue. So we don't know when they're going to open, and you're right, it might be a half a year. But we didn't put it in there.
But we are including the value, we're going to estimate the value of their completion for the tax purposes, right? So that's kind of the same question, isn't it? I mean, you can't estimate their tax bill unless you're estimating that they're going to open at a certain date.
You can put the revenue in there if you like. We just chose not to right now.
Is there an estimate of that? Just a,
But you can have a building that's complete
can get-
without operating yet. And if they don't pay until at the end of every quarter, then you could have a building that's done in October and then you wouldn't get paid until next year anyway.
So they have to be, even if they open for November, they'd have to be open a quarter. Would they consider that quarter, carry the November into December to the first quarter of 19? So it's really.
It's still quite up in the air.
So it could be June before you get your first payment out of the state.
but that would still be in a fiscal year.
Being the state, we know how they are.
Well, and they want the money too.
But at any rate, this revenue report does not reflect any casino.
And what about, I mean, also, but the private detail fire goes up a whole lot here. Is that casino related?
Yes. They put that in there, and I know that the treasurer actually had questioned that too. This 65,000 that private detail fire put in there. And it's assuming that the casino.
Is open and requires fire detail?
Well, they do plan reviews and everything else on it anyway, but they're assuming that that much will come in on detail.
And is that for, do you know whether that estimate is for a half a year or for a full year?
Well, they wouldn't have projected it for a full year, because we've all been well aware that it's not going to open on July 1st. That's
But there's also fire risk now, because there is a building.
Yeah, but they're not doing,
No, but
the fire are not doing detail there now. They will be doing detail the minute it opens every single night.
Okay.
Well, they'll actually doing it 24 hours.
24 hours, well, if they're open 24 hours, which is yet to be determined.
So is it that the same with the police detail too?
I don't think the police put their details now, right?
The police are doing detail now. The police didn't put their detail in.
Yeah, they put 15,000
Oh.
for it. I think that, that $65,000 number was questioned by the council on Saturday, but we didn't have definitive from the chief, and we just thought that whether it was from detail from fire or police, if it generated that much, we were gonna keep that figure in.
What about,
In the hopes of reaching it. If we had to, in fact, I remember Denise Surratt actually saying, if we have to offset it somewhere, you know, we'll try to offset it with other revenue, but we wanted something in there for it.
so the, another line item that jumps a lot is 4109, prorated property tax.
Yes. That prorated bill property tax is from Dave Robert, and he's the one who gave us that, and I believe it includes the idea of proration for when the casino gets its CO and the Longplex project getting a CO. Because remember, all the taxes are assessed on December 31st, so he prorates out a bill if you're given a CO in June or September, you're gonna pay that portion of it. And that's Mr. Roberts' number in there.
So how does that interplay with the estimated increase in valuation? Because he said that the casino was in the property value estimate.
Well, that's different, that's a prorated tax. The estimate he used, he said, I think was 10% or something. That's because he can only assess for the taxes what's completed on December 31st. That's different. This is saying, but if it opens in
October.
August or something, or October, he's gonna prorate it, the tax bill. We do that even on new homes, prorate taxes. So if you're 50% complete on December 31st, we're gonna charge you 50%, but if you finish in October, you're gonna get the other 50%.
Right, so his calculation of the total property value of the town, the 2.1 billion or whatever it was, if I'm understanding, that would not include an estimate of the casino value, but we would expect this tax?
He
Or
stated,
this-
yeah, he was only going to, he wasn't quite sure, but he was only going to assess about 10% of the casino building was going to be completed by December 31st, of whatever he assumes that tax, that building to be worth. So if it's assessed at 60 million.
That's December of, that we just passed?
Right.
Okay, I got you.
And this proration is going to be for the value of that building from January 1st to whenever it gets its CO. That's what triggers the proration tax bill.
So it's just a good estimate.
It's just a good estimate, but Dave Robert is pretty good at what he does.
Right, but the issue is double counting, making sure you don't, is in the $2.1 billion total on this sheet.
Does not include this proration value.
Correct, but what it's doing is at this time, whatever the completed value is in here, and then this is assuming more is completed. This is the incremental tax revenue.
Right.
Right, so the 2.1 billion is the value of the town as of December 31st that we just passed.
Right.
And that includes, I think his number was 10 million value of the casino for whatever they've got up in the land and all that. So this would be additional revenue to that.
The land would be, it's only the building
Right.
that you would.
So that would be part of the 10 billion,
The
10 million
land
he's
is
already
the land
calculated.
Is the land.
Ain't gonna change.
Right, but the building is, that's what a proration, prorated can only be on the property at the time of CO.
No, 4415 is investment income. That more than doubles. What's that
Yes.
about?
Yes, Denise Surratt said there are some different things that we're getting better interest on, and some other ones that were coming due and maturing with things, so, yep, she said because I questioned that one too, and she said she's fine with it.
So overall, we're going to have a $1,934,198 increase in revenue without any consideration for what I'll call the gambling fees
Not
from the
gambling
casino.
revenue, but the
Gam-
value of that
Yes,
building.
I know that.
That's what he's saying.
So the value of the building is over on this sheet.
So the real estate tax.
So that's here.
Is in here too. That 375,000 is because the casino was gonna get a CO hopefully sometime before.
But that's the value of the building, not the revenue from
Right,
gambling.
there is no revenue,
Right, not until they start working.
no gaming revenue.
No
Not until
gaming,
they start
okay.
giving us revenue,
Right.
start working.
Right,
Which is kind of paid in arrears of a quarter.
right.
The payments come from the state.
This is a quick question. Was there an agreement at the beginning on when they would start giving it to us? What was the agreement?
Not till it's operational and it's.
So you just said whenever they wanted to?
Isn't it?
Okay. all
Once
right.
it starts to generate the revenue, and then it's a quarter behind.
But it's a $3 million minimum. So would that be prorated? If they're open a half a year, are we guaranteed $1.5 million?
I don't know.
I would assume, but that's an assumption. I will ask that question.
Thank you.
I believe 3 million when I see it.
No, that's in state law. They'd have to change the state law
That's state law.
to not give it to us.
Yeah.
They might change state law,
Who makes
but
the laws?
the General Assembly, but,
That's what I said when they voted for the casino.
Forgetting
That's
the
what I said.
first
Nobody
part.
was-
So-
Exactly.
But not all the first year.
Not all the first year.
just, I had two more quick questions and then I'll stop. Stamp tax, that 70,000 does not include roughly 2/3 of revenue that goes directly to open space, correct?
The stamp tax, the state gets their cut first.
Mhm.
The town is, the town's portion that's left after the state takes, I forgot how much it is. It takes their share, and then the town is left with their share. And of the town share, 40% goes to the general fund and 60% goes to open space.
Right, so this is the 40%.
That's the 40%.
So there's another 80 or 90,000 that goes directly to open space.
Yes.
That goes to open space, and there's a percent that goes to the state of Rhode
Right,
Island.
okay,
So
but the
I'm above it.
open space isn't reflected on the budget.
So it means I'm really gonna
Okay.
have to increase there, aren't
And we had talked about the police department's fee for renting out cars for details. And and that was being reported as a negative expense? Has that been changed, and does that appear in here, or is that in
I? I
addition?
don't see that
Okay.
on here.
So that's still considered a negative expense?
Yes, I guess it is.
Okay, thank you.
So I'd like it, if you could take a look at this, we can ask more questions, by all means. I know this is hard to digest all of this in one meeting right now. So you'll have another bite at the apple if you have other questions, but rather than going line by line. All right. So if we could now go to the third item on the agenda is just an update on the site visits.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Denise.
So the one thing I would just want to say that last week there were just 4 of us that went to the police department, which is totally fine. I don't know in the future if we could kind of give a, this is just me speaking, I hope I'm not out of line. I felt a little embarrassed there were only 4 of us there for this is me, my personal opinion. I know people are away and people are doing things, but I think it'd be a good idea before we go on the site visits if we could maybe get a pre-head count on how many we can expect. I think only because when we sat there, we said, I think there's more people coming, and there never was. I felt a little embarrassed. This is me. So with that being said, we have confirmed with Mr. Rarick that at 9 a.m. at the high school, in the back of the high school, in the school department building, where Bill's office is. He asked to meet there. We'll do the tour of the high school first, and then we'll go over to the middle school.
That's at 9 o'clock?
That's at 9 o'clock. Do we have a rough estimate of who's planning to go, just so we know? I don't know, I'll be there.
Yeah, timing-wise, I should be able to.
I definitely will not be there.
Will not be there. Good.
Too much walking for me.
Alex, you probably won't be there either.
Can I get you a golf cart or a hover around?
And that's, I think I'd like to do that before every site visit, just so we could know who to expect. That way, if someone really is running late, we can say, you know what, we're waiting for somebody. So thank you for that.
9 o'clock.
Michael, just on that note, last weekend I was out of town from,
Oh, and that's okay. No problem. I
I would've let you know.
it'd be good to go going forward, just so we can expect.
That's good. Yeah, it's
almost
fine.
like a wedding or a birthday party. Just want to know how many people would be in attendance.
put a positive spin on it.
And we won't do anything St. Patrick's Day weekend, the 17th, and then we, I did want to ask, and I'll work this out, the 24th, we do have the senior center first, and then I'll work with, hopefully, Ms. Mello and Chief Lloyd on which, if not all 3 fire stations will visit that.
I already told the
On the
chief he'd be
24th, on the 10th,
Say it
sorry.
again?
I already told the chief he'd be there the 24th.
Okay. Do you think he'll want us to go to all 3 stations,
It's up
Alex?
to you guys, what you wanted to did last time.
Yeah,
Is that the consensus? Would we all want to go to all 3?
yes.
If we're doing the senior center and all 3, that's a long.
It's going to be a long day.
Well,
Doing
yeah.
the senior center first?
The senior center will be first, because we thought the senior center would be first, and then we'll hop right down the street to do the main street, which is not a lot of travel. Then from there, we'd have to go to Stafford and down to East Road, so it's up to you if you want to have that long day. I mean, I would think that's probably
We
it.
could do town rec and the senior center. Because with the fire, we have to drive to all parts of town anyway.
With rec, you would have to too, though. I mean, you're going essentially from Picasset to Town Farm.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I was thinking
To
of the same,
behind the fire
I was thinking the same thing, and I'm like,
But why can't we, why do we have to do, oh, because somebody has to walk us around, right? Like, why do we have to do them one day? Like, if we were at the senior center,
Well,
and then we
also,
were at the fire
also
station,
we're
we
in a
go to
time,
Picasset.
we're in a time crunch. We want to have this done.
No, what I'm
Also-
saying is the senior center, the station, and Picasset are all on one block. Like, why couldn't we do those?
Yeah,
in
but I
one?
think then we have to get somebody from the rec department to come.
Multiple times.
That'd be hard, yeah. So do we want, when I talk to Chief Lloyd, do we want to go to all 3? I'm just letting you know if you want to do that, it's going to be a long day. It's going to be 3 hours. Minimum. I don't think the senior center will take more than a half hour. Maybe it will. The travel time to the north end fire station is very minimal, 30 seconds.
let's plan in 4 seconds.
What's that? Yeah.
Plan in
So do we want to still do that? I know we're in a time crunch, but if we're not doing anything next week at all, we have to kind of load it up a little bit.
Okay.
That's fine.
Bite the bullet to have 1 week off, kind of bite the bullet on the next week. I just want to make sure before I ask the chief.
Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Is that gonna be 9 o'clock?
We'll start at the senior center at 9 on the 24th. I have not put that meeting up yet on the website, the Secretary of State, so as soon as I get confirmation from Chief Lloyd, then I will make that so I can distribute it at the next meeting.
Okay. Distribute the minutes.
Okay, these were emailed out, sorry for the short notice, but please take your time, and as always, please let me know if there's anything that I missed or made a mistake on. One caveat I do want to point out, under number 1, the presentation by Mary Sahadi. There was a lot to ingest, so I didn't want to try to reinterpret for you all, so that's why I put the C video, because I thought it was a lot of information, so hope you don't mind.
Can I suggest on that number 1 that we change the department's 2017 audit to the school department's budgeting practices? Because that's really what she was talking about. She really, she hadn't done the audit, she didn't have any background info, she was speculating on a lot of items.
Are you done?
That's my suggestion.
Not only that, I didn't understand until reviewing that she came in not to talk about the audit. And last year when we talked about the audit, we talked about this document. She came, and this document covers every department in the town and the full budget of every department in the town. So instead, our minutes said we were going to discuss this.
The agenda did.
The agenda, sorry, thank you. Instead, she came in not representing the audit firm, but as a consultant, and I didn't understand that then. And I apologize to the town of Tiverton because I completely misunderstood. Instead, she talked about a couple items. And so it's really important on the minutes that it reflect that this was not discussing the audit by the auditor, but this was discussing Mary Sahadi as a consultant, not representing Haig Sahadi, but she was coming in as a consultant, and I still don't understand why only this item was addressed. I'm concerned that the way we presented this information on our agenda was very misleading, because this targeted a single item that really got attacked, and at the same time we did not discuss these budget items with the department that creates these numbers, and we weren't able to consult with them directly as to where these numbers come from. So I'd like the minutes to reflect that this was a consultant, Mary Sahadi, talking about a minute piece of the audit without representation by the department that the information affected.
I have a question about that as we were looking at it, because the agenda did say that they were coming to discuss the audit. Mm-hmm. So was there a request made by anybody of this body for her to only come and specifically talk about the school department, because there was no other department that was discussed in that,
Yeah.
nor was the audit itself discussed as
yeah.
explained. So where did that, who requested that piece of information to come and for her to make specifically that presentation?
So.
Because that was not reflected on the agenda.
So, as a point of order, is right now we're just talking about the minutes, right? And then when we talk about other, we can talk about why did this happen? And I'm embarrassed because I did not understand. I thought we were being spoken to by the auditor instead of a consultant who was representing a single point.
And where's the rest of the town audit?
May I ask, well, I think the discussion about that presentation ought to happen before we make any votes or changes to the minutes. So if we're going to do that under other, I would ask that we table the minutes until after that discussion, just because what we put in the minutes will be reflected by that conversation, I suspect.
So we have a motion to delay or postpone discussion on the minutes, move to other. So we can second that?
Okay.
All in favor? Any opposed?
I'll abstain. I wasn't here.
Okay, so now we go to other items.
So it would be a great time to ask that question.
I'll just reiterate, when the agenda stated that we were discussing the audit, that was not what was presented to us. What was presented to us, as Jen said, was consultant work, and we only discussed the school department and discrepancies with the school department. At no time were we given the whole audit. At no point was the whole audit discussed. And I didn't see where there was any request for her to come in and make that specific presentation. So that I didn't know how that came about or how that was, because that wasn't what was presented on our agenda. It was the audit.
Didn't she work for the auditing firm?
She does, but
But she even said, if we go back to the tape, that she was discussing it as a consultant. She reiterated that more than once during that discussion. And what we were presented with was that we were going to be discussing the 2017 audit.
But to be
not
clear,
just
she
the
was,
school.
she was here on behalf of her firm. She brought somebody with her and mentioned
But
that
she
somebody
was-
else from her firm would have been here, but for some other engagement. So the firm itself may have been here in a consultant capacity in addition to its contract as an auditor, but it was still as the auditing firm.
But who, do we know?
Why did we not see the 2017 audit?
Cecil, did you request that a consultant come in?
No.
Denise, did you request that a consultant come in? To speak to this single part of the budget? I'm just, because we were going to, I thought we were going to talk about the audit, and we didn't talk to the auditors, and I was able to listen to most of the audit presented by a different representative from Hague and Sahadi. And it was very informative, and it's what I thought we were going to be doing last week.
So what is your question?
My question is, do you have any idea how this person came as a consultant?
Well, first of all, Mary owns the firm, and she didn't do the actual work. That's why I think she called herself a consultant. I wasn't here, keep that in mind. It was a discussion with Cecil. And last year, the auditor came here, or the year before. I'm not sure if it was last year.
We didn't hear from the auditor last
year.
year.
So it was
Denise, it was handed out.
All right, so Denise did it, but there was one year that the auditor came. So we were having a discussion, because he was at our meeting, and we were having a discussion, and I believe you requested that the auditor comes here.
No, we did have it in the context of a whole audit presentation. And I said that that would depend on the wishes of the committee. Then time constraints came in. I talked to Brendan, who apparently talked to you.
Right, because I asked Brendan, because they asked me, because I had mentioned to them,
Because there
they might
was-
come.
there became
They had
a
asked me
window of
if you
time.
guys had a date, so I asked Brendan, do you have a date you want to speak with the auditor? And he
But
gave me
you
the
and I-
date.
But-
So I didn't initiate it at all.
When you and I, when you and I were talking about it, we were talking in the context of the whole fiscal year 17.
Correct.
So why?
I have no.
Why did this
chose
person
to do
show
that?
up?
Well, she's certainly
ahead.
part of the audit firm. Why she chose, you'd have to ask her. I can speculate.
Well,
But that doesn't help.
my biggest concern
But-
is that she was discussing some numbers in a way that I think were particularly inflammatory, and without
just shocking.
without the department here able to address questions.
But we will be able
to
to
it.
in the future.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
And then I think it breaks the meeting rule, that we're in a meetings violation, that we said that we were going to have, we're going to review the audit, and the auditors were going to come, and instead, we had a consultant come that reviewed a couple items from one part of one budget, and I think that it is misleading to our public. And I'm personally embarrassed, and I apologize to the town of Tiverton, and I didn't understand it in the meeting. I apologize to the school committee members, and I think this was an unfair, a whole lot of time. And I think it was a really unfair way to treat an important body of our town community.
Okay. I'd like to, I'm going to invoke the chair's privilege. I'll let everyone have a chance to speak. And so, but I don't want this to go back and forth in terms of people jumping on to each other. One thing I want to make clear, I did consult the town solicitor. This was not a violation of the open meetings law. That if someone came and makes a presentation, if someone from the audience presents, they can do so. That does not, we did not take an action. We did not have a vote that was done. It did not put us in any kind of decision-making position. So it was not, in the solicitor's opinion, a violation of the open meetings on that. So what I'd like to do is if I could go around and just ask each person if you have any comments or thoughts on this, we can air those now. Dave? Jen? Yeah.
No, I agree with Jen's comments. We have in the past had that entire document. The whole audit is reviewed, and they did single out with her opinions just one part of our budget. So I just think that it was poor choice.
My turn? Let's go back. On the town council meeting on February 12th, the auditor, one of the representatives of the audit firm came and presented the whole audit. Dr. Larkin was here. The gentleman that presented it covered quickly the broad strokes of the audit. What I would call the red flag that popped up, as was observed in the press, was the fact that the school reserve budget had gone up to over $4 million. Dr. Larkins had a chance to discuss it. It was certainly discussed at the council meeting. It was no surprise. He was there. He made comments. So why she chose that to talk about, I don't know. I didn't ask her. I would speculate that because the topic of discussion, well, first off, that if you look at fiscal year 16 and 17, 16, the school department had a $3 million and some odd dollar.
You know what, I'm sorry, I have to
You're out
interrupt.
of order. Let him
I am,
speak.
I am out of order, but he is.
You are
he is-
out of order,
He is
please.
discussing the issues
Gavel.
without the representation
Jennifer,
of the
you're
school
out of
committee.
order, please.
Jennifer.
You will have a chance to speak.
The school committee really doesn't have any role in the audit. The audit is per the charter. It's no choice. It's designated that the council hire them. I believe that the audit firm selected has to come from an approved list from the audit general. So it's a pretty well a bid thing. And the responsibility is from the auditor to the town council. The job of an external auditor, as I'm sure you all understand, is to look for discrepancies, to look for things that are out of the ordinary. At the town council meeting, the gentleman from the firm did point out that it was very unusual, strike the word, very, it was unusual that the school department of a municipality have a bigger reserve than the entire town did. So, that's a fact. That's not insulting anybody, that's just the fact.
And
The
there's
$4
some
million
facts
is there. There's no doubt about it. Now, an audit is a snapshot of time, so things go on. But when that audit was done, the $4 million was there. The prior year, the $3 million was there. You look at the total town reserve, it was only $3 million some odd. So it was unusual. So now why she chose to do that, I'll say it again, I don't know. I would speculate that she played off the fact that the school surplus was a topic of discussion at the town council meeting, which I'm sure her colleague told her about, or she saw in the reports in the press. From an audit standpoint, you talk about the exception. You talk about the things that are out of ordinary. So, and I don't see where the school committee has any room to be upset. They knew that had been discussed.
The point is,
Jennifer, please,
the
it
point
is not-
is whether we're
you're out
able
of
to
order.
talk about this
Gavel.
information.
You're
And
out-
we're not allowed to talk
Jennifer,
about
you'll
this
have your
for
chance.
information without advertising that we're
We
going to
are,
talk about the
absolutely. We're
We're
information.
talking about this now, and you're getting ample opportunity.
You'll have your chance.
We've already established it was no, through legal counsel, that it was no open meetings violation. So, no matter how you twist it, strike that word twisted, no matter how you look at it, the fact that when the audit, which by the way, as far as I know, is still only a draft, I have yet to see the final audit, the draft that was presented to the council, the fact at that point, there was a $4 million surplus in the school department.
Want to say that
The
one more
town,
time?
the town had 3-point-something million, most of which is reserved per the charter as a 3% safe reserve. So the school department, the school committee are free to do whatever they want. They can feel however they want, but they can't claim that they didn't know that it was a topic of discussion. And for the last time, I'll say, I have no idea why she chose to make the presentation the way she did, but it's somewhat logical because it was a big red flag item in the audit. So,
Could I go on?
yep,
So
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. So, I know some people are getting a little upset, and what I think we've done a really good job, and we need to remind ourselves, since the beginning of the year. I think we've done a really good job as a budget committee as a whole and really respecting each other and keeping our emotions at check. And I just want to remind everyone of that. I know we get amped up sometimes. I just want to say that I worked with Cecil for the first 5 or 6 weeks, and I've worked with Brendan the last 3 or 4 weeks. They've both done a really good job of helping me create the agendas. I've done communicating with Deb about doing the minutes. She's prepared me very well to do this, and what I want to remind everyone, just so some things are fact, from the agenda from last week, it did say presentation by Mary Sahadi on the fiscal year 2017 town audit. I will say I did, as a newbie, think we were going to get the entire town. We did only get the school. That part is fact. The reason why the minutes reflect C-Town video, because I thought this would be a topic of conversation tonight. I didn't want to put my opinion or spin on what I was writing for minutes. That's why I put exactly what I put, because I somehow felt that would come up. Another thing I wanted to just be in the back of our minds, when she did say she was here representing the company as a consultant, which I believe if I watched the video, she did say that. She did say that she didn't have, don't quote me on her exact words, but she didn't have anything that was remarkable about the town audit, but it was the school audit that was concerning. And that's what I remember about that presentation, that she wanted to share what was concerning to her about what she found with the schools. So with that being said, if you have doubt and you want to rewatch the video, exactly what she said, because I did, and sometimes I do that before I write the minutes, that's what I got out of it. So that's why I wrote a very vague C video into the minutes. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Okay. Mike?
Well, I agree with what was just said. I think, to me, a consultant implies that somebody hired her to come here. Well, it's like we were just told she owns the firm, so she could be here for that reason, if no other. I agree. I thought we were going to get the full-blown audit. We didn't. We did get her concerns, and I think what she was trying to do, without inflaming us and getting us all upset, was just saying, look, this is unusual. This is something you need to look at. This is something that needs to be addressed. And what you do about it is up to you. And we have a meeting with the school people next meeting, and I guarantee you it's going to come up, and it's going to be addressed vigorously. Having said that, I think we need to calm down a little bit.
I agree. Everybody's spoken very well on what's going on. Yeah, I don't know that there's any real reason to be upset about it. I understand it was by surprise a little bit, different than you expected. These are just facts we're just going to go through. So I agree with that we can ask them when we talk to the school department. We will be able to ask any questions and clarify anything that anyone has. It is that a little bit unusual that we didn't get more about the town audit, but I guess she chose, what I understand is she's choosing things that stand out to her. So that's the logic that Cecil was talking about also, that in her logic, she wants to give us any issues that come up to her mind and to her forefront. And that's all I had to say. I think we're doing fine, and it's up to you, Justin.
Well, I'm going to be the moderator here, the moderate position, which is, as I usually am. I was actually surprised to see this on the agenda, because last year, so it's not unusual that she came and presented only part, from my experience, because I've never seen the auditor come to the budget committee and present the budget, or the audit. I mean, we got a copy last year, but it's a very thick document, and frankly, most people on the budget committee haven't gone through it. I don't think most people in the universe have gone through it. So it's not usual that the budget committee would get that. My impression, very clearly, having had that surprise that we were going to hear from the auditor directly, was that there was a misunderstanding, because when she first came here, she said, you already heard about the rest of the audit. So I think she wasn't there for the town council, thought that was us and thought she was coming to present the area of concern at that meeting. I get the impression that it was just a misunderstanding, that she was directing this. She didn't think she was rehashing the whole audit. She thought she was targeting one thing because they had already done that, and she didn't make a distinction between a budget and a town council. That was my impression from that. To be clear, the auditor is hired by the town as a consultant. It's not a town position. So it's not like the town solicitor came and said, I'm here in my capacity as a consultant, as opposed to the town solicitor. The auditor is a consultant. So I don't know that there's much of a distinction there. And that's important because it wasn't her opinion. It was her professional analysis as the person representing the firm that the town hired to do an audit for it. And that's important because it was, I would say, in my opinion, shocking information worthy of further investigation. So I don't think there was anything untoward. I think it was at most a misunderstanding. Well, I think that's what it was, a misunderstanding that she thought she was targeting one thing for our benefit because she thought we had already heard the rest of it. So the fact that she came and presented, that the fact that the auditor, her firm, had to go to the state because the school department had allocated funds incorrectly per the rules on a grant. That's something it's worth us knowing. It's something it's worth the town knowing. Something that frankly I would think an auditor as a consultant would be shirking its duty as a company to not highlight things like that. And so I think it absolutely was appropriate. It belongs on our minutes. In fact, I don't know if we're discussing the minutes as part of this or if we're just going to go back to that. So I'll address those concerns when we get to the minutes. But that would be my attempt to broker peace in Tiverton.
Meetings like these are about due process and fairness. And we are supposed to inform, when we've talked about other budgets that have had, about every other committee, we've had representatives from those departments come up and talk to us. We discussed last week at great length, and then around this table just now, there have been numerous members that have discussed details of this budget without the balance of the department that it affects, without the balance of the department being able to say, that is an excellent question, and I can specifically tell you where that balance comes from, why we have it, and what it means. And instead, the way the information has been presented is to make it look like the school committee is squirreling away money and not taking care of its accounts intelligently, neither of which are true. And I think it is bizarre that nobody knows how this Mary Sahadi came to specifically talk to our committee on this point. That no one will admit who asked her to come as a consultant, and she repeated several times, I'm coming as a consultant, not to tell you about the whole audit. My last point is, on the February 12th meeting, at the very beginning when the representative, not Mary Sahadi, but the representative representing Hagan Sahadi came, he said, I have to commend the town of Tiverton for keeping its books. They look really good. That is a remarkable town, and they're keeping track of the town money and taxes very well, and that we're exemplary. and that our numbers were what they should be. So he prefaced everything by saying that. I think this is an extraction from targeted at a single department that isn't up here able to defend itself, and there are members here taking pop shots without the balance of that committee to be able to carefully explain where these numbers come from.
Alex, Mr. Cody?
Yes, somebody hired this firm. Had to be the town council, it was, or the budget committee. Somebody hired them to come here. She just did a job. They did the audit, and evidently what come out of it was this red flag that come up, and she brought it to our attention. I don't see where she did anything wrong. That's it.
So I don't know. I've asked as well. It wasn't my intention. My intention was that we as a committee were going to cover the audit. I too, as a newbie, was trying to figure out what we would have in the scintillating 173-page report. So I was surprised that it was limited only to this item, looking at the school. Just so everyone knows, the school department has been invited in terms of dates that we could accommodate them. They chose next week as the date to come. And I would ask that the committee have an open mind. So if what was looked at was through the town audit, and part of that town audit it was including the school's expenses and revenue, Hagan Shahadi has come up and gave this analysis, and ample opportunity, hopefully people with open minds will listen to the school department that can look at these items that could be very easily, hopefully explained as to how they put money in the certain expense accounts as they did, why they chose to do that, and the accounting for certain other items. So that's what I would ask, is I'd welcome the school committee to come back and talk about these things, and that what was discussed last week was information that was important, but it's not something that the school department or anyone is being shut out of this process. But I am disappointed because I didn't. It wasn't what I expected. I was waiting to get through that and then to hear the rest of the audit, and it wasn't until afterwards to realize that, oh my gosh, I wonder how this happened, because it was definitely not something that I was expecting. So what I'd like to, at this point, we have minutes from March 1st that are out there, is to move back to that agenda item and would entertain any changes. I agree, I appreciate, Mike, your comments that the content of what was in there, and certainly the content of everything, everyone had a chance to speak tonight, that the taxpayers can, the citizens of the town can see how we've looked at this issue, and would suggest that the changing in the wording be relatively short, accurate, and all, and that the reflections of how people feel what took place, right or wrong, the citizens could see through the video.
Mr. Chair, I felt it very helpful, rather than just having many, many pages of an audit, to actually hear from them. So maybe we can, in the future, get the town side and the school side next year, you know, that type, have someone present it. I think that was a good thing. So thank you for making the effort.
Go ahead.
I think number one needs to say, in lieu of a review of the full audit, Mary Sahadi spoke as a consultant only on the school department's budget. The school department was not represented.
So have you written that down?
No.
But she spoke on the audit, not on the school department's budget, on the audit of the budget.
So can...
Of the budgeting practices.
Well, how about presentation by Mary Sahadi on the town's audit with special emphasis on the school department?
With exclusive emphasis.
She only had one prepared document, and that was the school department. Sorry, she only had one prepared document. She had no other documents or budgets to present to us.
I thought we were going to get 12 more documents.
I thought maybe we would, I thought we would get the town audit maybe the next week, I didn't know.
Right,
you know,
that's,
so.
but as what she came prepared with was one piece of paper that she presented us with that only had one department, which
School.
was the school. So however we alter that should reflect that.
And that's, he has that there, he spoke on the town's
Well,
school
I think
department.
I've done a good job. I'm going to defend myself.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm the one that wrote it. I'm going to remind you all, everything you're saying to be fixed is what I've done. So I do take it personally. I'll just say that. So it says, let me read it to you. It says, presentation by Mary Sahadi. Everyone agree we had a presentation by Mary Sahadi that was here? Okay. I'm going to break down the next part of this. On the town's school department's 2017 audit. That's what she did. If you guys want to change it, I'll
Michael,
write whatever you want.
I think
That's
Je-
where I'm leaving it.
Michael-
And I can't do a mic drop.
Jennifer just wants you to put who she was.
I'm just kidding. I'm just
No, I know, Michael, can you say who she was? Like, she's the consultant owner of Hagan Sahadi.
But we don't pick through the minutes each week and make these little things like this. So to take this one thing and dice it and chop it and mince it makes me feel a little annoyed, I'll be honest. But you tell me what you want me to put, and I will rewrite it the way you guys want.
On that
It's
kind
a lot
of note,
work to do, so it was very simply written.
on that note, we do, even in this agenda, talk about, or these minutes, have line items with dollar numbers on everything. Now, I've in the past argued that that's unnecessary, that it could just be essentially the agenda. We talk about these things. So one of the reasons I've suggested that in the past is the problem is when you present a whole bunch of numbers for some stuff, and then see video for presentation for something else, it does shape the sense of our meeting. So somebody who just goes to our minutes will be able to find all these dollar amounts for some reason, but not the dollar amounts that she presented. And we do get into stuff that might be similarly editorial elsewhere. You know, medical physicals for veteran firefighters is not occurring due to recent budget cuts. Now, that's accurate, but it's not just a dollar amount being presented in our minutes. So what we pick and present does change the sense of the meeting. And I would think, I would want to see in here two bullet points of the key points that she made in her presentation. If we're going to, in other instances, put bullet points of the points that were made, I think it's insufficient to say, see the video for something that may be controversial. It just seems to me not appropriate use of minutes.
Because as a consultant, I thought she was making her suggestions, and I didn't want to make fact on a suggestion, so that's why I didn't know what to put. I don't know if you guys would understand that as the person putting it together. I just didn't know how to put it. I think what I maybe should have put in there is see attached, and I could have attached what she handed out. And if you have any questions, you can either email her, call her, or look at the attachment. But I don't want her opinion to mince with my opinion.
I would suggest
do try to
that
choose some
you do
budget.
put the
I think
attached.
it's good to have her opinion, she's the auditor.
Because we all do get the attachments, they're handed out. So would you guys like me to rehash those and attach those to the minutes every week?
Should have been anyway.
Yeah, all the attachments.
All the attachments need to go, they don't need to be uploaded to the Secretary of State website, but they do need to be in the hard copy.
So this binder has every handout we've gotten over the last 2 months. Do you want me to make copies
No.
of all this and hand them to you? Because I'll give you a folder every week if you want.
No,
As
we
long as
already
I
have
get the
those.
budget expense
have
to
those.
reimburse
We already
me for
have
all
those.
Right.
Just attach them to the minutes that go to the town clerk.
But I haven't given the town clerk anything this whole year yet.
That's what you'll.
So do you, well, it's right here. You can have it tonight if you'd like it. But what I'm saying is,
You've requested this notice.
Thank you very
I'm
much.
going to go home.
Okay, thank
And
you.
I will
let you know.
that, Justin.
Well, what Mary gave us last week, the fact that she gave it to us makes it a public document, correct?
Yeah.
So that should be attached to the meetings, to the minutes that go to the town clerk. Or am I wrong?
No, she's there, already said all the handouts.
So I'm going to ask one last question because
That's it.
I want to make sure I'm understanding this. Mrs. Mello, do you want me to get into my vehicle, drive down here once a week, and hand you these minutes with all the attachments? Because I think that's what my budget committee, is asking me to do, is to attach the
Can
minutes.
he do it the following week?
Well, I'm asking her a question. Was that what you want me to do?
This body considers that part of your minutes, handouts that are given. I do that on the council level, but that's because we deal with so much of the paper. If that's what this body chooses, because if you go under the open meetings, it'll tell you how to do minutes, that you just need, or whatever else the committee chooses to have in their minutes. So if that's what you want to do, attach them each time you send in your set of minutes, just attach the handout, if that's what the body chooses you to do. You don't have to make a special.
That's easier to come down and get it to
Bring it
you.
on Thursday night.
That's what I suggested. I would re-give you what you've all gotten the week before, but I'll give it to you again with a copy of the
No,
minutes.
not
just
everybody, just
Nancy,
a
just Nancy.
copy for the history of the meeting.
But she's,
Your permanent minutes are kept here in the file cabinet.
correct.
So if you want that, if you want me to have those.
They're all here. Plan to give them to
A
you
backup copy to
at
give
the
them
end
back
of the
to
budget
you.
committee. I plan to give
Go
you
ahead, I've got nothing to
everything
say.
at once.
Okay, all right, so we need to get back to the wording on the minutes from March 1st. First item, there was a presentation, thank you, Mike, by Mary Shahadi. She is of Hagen Shahadi. Sahadi, excuse me.
Yeah.
On the school department's budget practices.
No, it's on the department's 2017 audit. That is what she spoke about.
I think it
She
needs,
spoke well beyond that. I mean, she did a historic analysis.
Of audits, though. Of audits.
Correct.
So everything she presented was from 4 years of audits.
And her knowledge
So
on
if anything,
auditing.
it's the school department's 2014 through 2017 audits.
but that it needs to be stated that she exclusively reported
It was.
on part of the school department's
So what I'd suggest
Audit.
is language. So
Okay.
we're at a point now. it's 10 o'clock.
presentation by Mary Sahadi as a consultant on the town's, presentation by Mary Sahadi as a consultant, exclusively reporting on part of the on part of the town's school department audit.
It wasn't on part, it was on the whole audit. Okay,
So
sorry.
That's
There's
a motion for language, is that correct?
That's a motion for
Can you
language.
say it one more time? Because I'm writing it.
Okay.
Please.
Presentation by Mary Sahadi as a consultant, exclusively reporting on part of the town's school department's audit.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Discussion?
I'd like to amend that to add specific, quote, comma, specifically that the school department has tended to under budget its salary line by approximately $800,000 and underspent a federal grant by around $500,000, requiring the auditor to contact the state and figure out how to account for that money.
Very important.
Okay. I have an amendment. Do you have to have a
Yeah, you have to second the amendment.
second? Any
I second.
Second on the amendment. Okay, and then you vote first
On the amendment.
Discussion?
Well, I have a, did the word intentional get used just now?
No.
No, okay. I thought I heard intentional, I didn't say that.
My rationale for this is I think the language stressing consultant, this, and it is contentious. And if you're going to open that door, I think that you have to give some context to the person who sees the minutes, and, well, what did she say? What was this about?
You have the whole
No, but that's-
document that she gave.
The practice for, I mean, different people have different practices, but to my experience, the practice for most people who would go to the length of looking into minutes will go to the Secretary of State's website, which is the clearinghouse for all this stuff. They'll see the PDF there. If the attachments are not physically in that PDF, they'll never see it. Most people won't even know where to go. And it's not as if our minutes lack other specific items that might be of interest to the public, so.
Well, so in response is that, again, we are, it's suggesting that we put information out there that was not, we did not allow our school department to explain, and I'm not even going to say defend itself. They don't have to defend themselves because the way it was presented was accusatory and I think patently inaccurate and patently misleading.
Okay, so we now
You're
have...
accusing our auditor of misleading the town?
She's a professional.
We have an amendment on the table from Justin.
Seconded, was that seconded by Ruth?
By Ruth,
Is that what
seconded,
happened?
okay. And then you vote on the amendment first?
But you said there was discussion, possibly. I think that we just make sure we cover everything, because you've got all these dollar amounts on these other issues, and nothing about what she said as any kind of information at all, as far as her concerns. That's what we hired her, or she was hired for, to give us red flag of any kind. So, you know, I don't care how you word it, but make sure that you give some of the information that was presented. And also, I think you wanted to say of Hagan Sahadi, so that you give the firm name. I think that was important, to tell what firm she was from. That's all I wanted to say. Just be careful.
Okay. Any other comments on, right now, we have an amendment that's been seconded. Any other comments?
Yeah, I've got one. I think we're getting to the point where we're trying to put too much detail into these amendments. I mean, there's got to be an easier way to do this. I mean, let me just float something like this. She raised areas of concern relative to
State.
An excess, what do we call it? I hate to use the word slush fund, so.
No.
Please don't. Well, you just did.
I tried to be, I tried to give specific approximations so that it wouldn't be, it would be objective.
Maybe like an excessive amount in reserve and failure to properly spend funds or whatever. But if we start going into, well, they spent $10 here and she didn't do that, you know, this thing is going to become so long that nobody's going to understand it anyway.
Just areas of concern, then. She let us know her opinion on areas of concern.
She let us know she had areas of concern relative to whatever.
Well, all I've done is given an approximation of what those two were, which would be of interest to anybody who, the purpose of minutes is to inform people who are interested in what was
Isn't
occurred.
a copy of that with the clerk now? What she gave us last week?
No, that's what,
Okay, so it will be.
that's going.
It will be.
So any other,
May I just say something? May I?
yes.
Of a document that you're all talking about, that would have seen a copy of that, whatever she gave you last week. And I thought you just said, well, I'll come together and talk about this. Betty, we always teach the kids, once the toothpaste is out of the tube, you can't put it back in. So if you read that, what Justin just said, it's like, oh my gosh, you know, I don't even know what he was referring to. I'm just saying, we should all come together, the town council, the budget committee, the school committee, talk about capital funds, this and that, form agreements, and then we can discuss it together, you know. And I just don't know if we should put something like
So-
you just said, that
Can we delay the minutes till the next meet, after we speak with the school department, Brendan?
Right.
Can we delay the minutes until after the school department talks to us?
We have to finish this. We have
think
don't have to.
Voting on this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We have an amendment that was proposed by Justin, it was seconded. And
I'd like to just with regard to the minutes, whatever was said at our meeting has already been said, is already public information. So I'd be uncomfortable if the budget committee were to say, this is contentious, what was said at our meeting, so let's silence this within the context of our minutes, in the interest of comedy or something, not comedy. I would be uncomfortable hiding information deliberately in the minutes because it might be contentious.
Nobody's hiding anything.
And I will just remind you of last year and everything you wanted removed because you didn't like it.
You didn't want any detail.
No
You didn't
detail.
want the public to know anything.
So I want to go through, we have an amendment, and then we have Jennifer's original motion that we vote on these. I think that the will of the body, as we did last year and this year, is that brevity is best. There's just no question in terms of what we all feel, we all know, and we're being recorded that for anyone that wants to see it. So if you want to figure out what happened in the meeting, we have to have some wording here that's short enough to let people know what took place. And I think what we have right now on both sides is some editorializing that we're going to be here, going to be for forever if we try to insert this kind of language, or it's just going to be a majority vote in terms of what goes in. So I'd like to move towards a vote on Justin's amended language. All in favor? Mike? Sorry. So on Justin's amendment, we had two yays. And all,
I abstain.
and then all,
That one's 2, 8, and 1, correct?
We haven't done opposed.
okay, all opposed? Okay, so then we go back to Jennifer's proposed language, and we'll bring that to a vote. All in favor? Could you read it again, Jennifer?
Mike, did you write it down?
What I have is presentation by Mary Sahadi as a consultant. We didn't put in I don't have the name of the firm, but exclusively reporting on part of the town's school department audit.
Not correct. It wasn't part. It was the whole audit of the
Okay.
school department.
No, it wasn't.
You can't lie in these minutes.
All in favor?
Well, there's no discussion on the main
We
motion?
didn't go to that, right? Did we do that already? No?
We discussed the amendment.
Sorry.
We started discussing, then
Right,
you
'cause
made
there
an
was an
amendment. We
amendment,
had to
right?
discuss the amendment.
So we'll open up for discussion.
Since I wrote the minutes, I would like to do a couple things. I would like to add, if we're going to get technical, we should add the name of the firm, which is what again?
Hagen.
Hagen Sahadi.
Hagen
Sahadi.
Can someone spell Hague for me?
Hagen.
Thank you. I personally don't like the word exclusively. This is an opinion for me. And I don't like the word part. That's just me. I don't have any other problems with it, except I would add including years 2014 through 2016, which I think she gave us in that handout.
17.
Well, there's
2014 to 2017 audits.
I like that. That's good.
the reason why I said part is when you look at last year's, it's only part, and when you look at this year's, it's only part of the school budget. So it's really a bizarre extraction to take this much out of this whole document.
But I wasn't on a budget committee that got that big handout before, so you were, and you, so that's why you
And
feel
this was
exclusively.
available to us online. We were given,
Right.
we were given this online. We have, this is last year's. This is available. It came to us via email, so
Correct.
we could read through it. We were going to discuss the audit, and she came, and we exclusively talked about part of one department. And we don't have to say 2017 because she addressed several years.
Do we have a problem with adding in Hagan and Sahadi after a consultant of?
That makes
We
sense.
should put that in, right?
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's final.
Yes, it is.
Why
Yeah.
can't we just put what she presented and then also say a full audit available, whatever?
But Denise, have you got the final audit report?
Well, it's been given to the state.
It's still a draft because it's still at the state because of.
So when are we going to see the actual final audit? Do you have any idea when we're going to get the audit, the final?
Well, the draft is basically won't be the final audit. The state just has to rubber stamp it.
Yeah,
So Denise doesn't know. I asked her the other day.
okay. But the
They-
draft,
It's that audit though. It's.
but the draft is online?
Yes.
Okay. Under the town? Okay.
And I have the correct,
Online or part of an email?
the name of the firm, just so you know, Michael, is Hague
I think it's.
Sahadi and Company.
Justin is.
Hague, comma, Sahadi and Company. Yeah, so just,
Yeah, it's definitely online. I wouldn't imagine it wouldn't have received the rubber stamp before going online, but, I mean, it's state government, who knows, but.
I can copy it at work, but
This
I
is the
can't
first
copy my
year this has
email.
ever happened. We usually get the final one right away. And we usually get it in January. There was issues.
You don't want to print out 200
Didn't
pages.
get it. For some reason, they're still calling it a draft.
name, I'll have to look.
But
Hagen.
they told me it's not gonna change.
And,
And you'll have to talk to the treasurer more about this. To tell you the truth, but the draft that's online will be the final, I'm positive of that.
That's
I'd
what
like
she
to
said.
reinforce what Mr. Dakota suggested. I think some of the language in there, like exclusively, I mean, that's inferable from anybody. I mean, if we're going to make people go search out data from what she's actually said, they'll find out that it was only a limited amount, and no department comes and tells us every detail of everything they possibly could. And it's contentious, and I think
Well, it was a
hold on, let me
contentious
finish, please.
report.
No, but for our minutes to be contentious, when we know from what Jennifer's been saying, the reason exclusively and in part are in there is because she thinks it was misleading and bizarre, and I don't think that's appropriate to be inserting into our minutes.
I didn't say write down it, bizarre.
But that's,
But she did only target
Okay.
part of a budget.
I want to, we got to put this to bed, limit the language. I feel like people have really had a great opportunity to say what they feel, and I'll smile for the camera. For those that, want to look, they can see why this was an issue for the board. I'd really like to get language that's short enough that would get us to get this done.
Sure.
Because if we don't do it now, we're not gonna, it's gonna be similar. Next week, we're gonna have similar issues. The issues around this aren't gonna.
I would like to make an amendment to the way that was worded.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, please.
second.
Okay?
Oh,
Thank you.
okay, well, you can read it, and then I'll second.
So I would like it to say, and I would like it to say, presentation by Mary Sahadi as a consultant of Hague, Sahadi and Company, reporting on the town's school department audit, which included years 2014 through 2017 audits. What I'm doing is leaving out the words exclusively and part of, just because I don't want to get into putting in minutes finger pointing, that's all.
Okay, fine. That's great.
So I have a proposed amendment.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Attaboy, Mike.
All opposed? And I have one abstention.
Thank you.
All right. And just because we're gluttons for punishment. Item number 6, we have other. One other item that I would like.
Did we
excuse me. Oh, wow.
vote on the minutes?
I don't want to start a battle here, because I only have one other thing on the number 2.
Okay.
The line of $6,300 increase for activities, I just would rather just see that line struck, because it actually reverts down to the line just below that, 7470. What she had asked for was a new restricted account. The council, they worked that out and said, no, we're not going to do that. It reverted back to an $11,300 line. So it's not actually a $6,300 increase. It remained the same.
Okay, so just.
So I have a proposed amendment on number 2 to strike the first bullet, 63. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, so strike that first bullet.
Okay, I'm sorry, that was 6,300 on number
Yep.
2.
I'll remember that for you, Mike.
2, 6,300, strike the whole thing, you said, correct?
Just that one, yeah, that
Just
bullet.
that one bullet, because the second bullet covers that essentially. It just reverts back to supplies, activities, and construction.
Do you need to count the vote for that?
I didn't see, because I was writing it all down.
So that was all in favor of striking that bullet? All opposed? Any abstentions? Abstentions?
I'm going to abstain because I
Well, I don't want to bring this up, but should the second line say activities also, or should we just leave it alone? This is 11,300 activities, okay. David, what do you think?
Oh, is the count named that?
Yeah, the account
That's the name? Okay.
7470,
That's the
It just reverts
name.
back to supplies, activities, instruction, and includes supplies and printing, so.
Any other changes to the minutes? Okay. Have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I'll make the motion.
All in favor? All opposed?
And I abstain.
You got one abstention. Okay, thank you. All right, another, under the other items, what I would like to do, in addition to discussing all the budget amounts and us coming up with a recommended budget that will translate into a dollar amount, you know, per thousand tax amount, is there are resolutions that we will have that get put onto the ballot as well. So what I'll do is I'll get, and I can circulate around to everyone what those resolutions were last year. They're the ones that are on the cover page for the ballot. But those are important things for us to look at, decide which ones we want to include this year. And we don't want to be in a position where we're finishing at 11:59, trying to get our budget done, and these are important items. So I'd ask you to think about those if you have time to go back to, they're online, but I'll see if I can send around what we did last year. But I'd really like people to be thinking about those. Any other items for this august body? Therefore, I'll entertain a motion to...
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? All opposed? And no abstentions.